Though, right?
Baseball is back, and so are the boys of summer. So are the commissions. Myself, Kyle, and Eric. Eric, how are we doing today?
Doing wonderful, man. I'm excited. Ready to get rolling. Baseball season's here, right around the corner. We got our draft next week, man. The excitement's ready. I think we're all ready for it, and I'm hyped. Heck yeah.
Spring baseball is officially back. The Chicago Cubs are on the air as we speak, actually. Facing, I believe, the Baltimore Orioles. Nope, the San Francisco Giants. I saw an orange team earlier, not the Orioles, the Giants. Losing 3-0. It appears the spring Cubs are not a wagon, especially after losing to the Sox. I'm already questioning their contender
Oh
status
my
here.
God, you crazy.
As
I
as
weirdly, I
hope.
weirdly, for some reason, I think I mentioned this before. I really don't watch much spring baseball at all. Like I'll watch the World Baseball Classic because
Yeah.
I do enjoy that, but I actually don't watch much spring ball at all because like when opening day hits, I almost want it to be like baseball's back. Like oh my God, I'm weird like that. I'll watch a couple like spring innings here and there, but not much.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll like watch it for enjoyment. I'm not really watching for a whole lot of different things. I like seeing some of the data and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, not watching a lot. But it's fun to get excited about, fun to root for, and all that good stuff. See if fair players hit home runs. But considering this is not the first time we've recorded this podcast, it's the first time you're hearing it. Probably because there's 3 hours worth somewhere in the
Yeah,
stratosphere that will
the
never be
Ghost
recovered.
Pod.
Never to be recovered again. So we're back though. We're gonna try it again. A lot of the stuff we have already discussed, but you guys will never know that. So we'll do our best to try and recap it. So without further ado, I don't think we need to waste any more time knowing this is gonna be a long one. We got a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. We're gonna start with a recap of
Real
2025.
quick, did we
Yeah.
did we send this out or are we just rolling with us two? I wasn't sure.
Oh yeah, let's send it out really quick. That's a good call.
In case anyone joins, I don't know, but I know
So
Crim.
while I'm doing that, Eric, why don't you tell them what's on the rundown today?
Yeah, looking at kind of the 2025 recap, from a roto perspective, Bryce took it, but obviously the head-to-head's the big trophy right there, and Kyle took the crown last year, second ring, his second ring there. Bryce, like I said, took the roto crown. It was close though. Bryce at 115, Phil 108, Chad 107. A lot of teams were in it. I mean, there is that big kind of gap off between 7, 8, 9, and then the rest 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And again, we're probably going to say this a lot, but we talked about this on the last pod about how it really is kind of cool. At least I think to see kind of like, hey, there's the contending teams, there was the teams that kind of sold at the deadline and stuff like that, where we really kind of get more of a real baseball landscape there. So I do think that's fun. But yeah, I mean, it was close. Even the championship last year was you and your dad. I mean,
The
you come up.
Cockfest was all the way back.
Yeah, the Cockfest was fully on right there. So,
Was fully
that
erect.
yeah, oh yeah, it was. So no, it was a fun season. It was cool looking at some of the numbers there. It's really neat to see how close some things are. I know we mentioned last time is the RBI total that I had, like the lead I had on that, and just how the stolen bases, just how close they were. I mean, really to think we played that many games, there was that much happening, and I see what three teams tied at
Mhm.
176 stolen bases. So it's kind of crazy to see where categories lie, how close home runs were in certain aspects from a few teams, and this and that. And then when you look at the all-time things, and I'm sure you'll do it in a second, but it's neat to see.
Yeah, thank you for giving me a shout out. League champ here. As a podcast host, you kind of have to, put your money where your mouth is and pretend like you know what you're talking about. I mean, I know some other hosts of other podcasts that, maybe go on some pretty significant losing seasons and some pretty bad runs in their respective sports. And so, here in the Boys of Summer, we hold our podcast hosts to a higher standard of success, not like any
We'll
other
spend it if we don't
sideline.
do well.
Any other sideline leagues of 3-13 records, hosting a
Wish I had those fake
podcast.
rings I could just flash right now. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm so bad at the fantasy football, but I know I'm a shit.
So, yep, our only active two-time champ. We have another two-time champ, but he shall not be named because he is no longer around. So, yeah, two-time champ sitting here, reigning champ. Got to defend the title this year, going for the two-peat. Maybe we'll talk about a dynasty after this year, but I think it's pretty. I think the dynasty is pretty much here. I mean, a 5-year run of success. I put this together not just to pat myself on the back though, but to kind of compare the teams year by year, season by season, and kind of overall. So this is our Boys Summer Archives. It's shared in the group chats pinned in there. We have all-time roto rankings, all-time head-to-head records. We have averages over time, so that way people who have been in here a different number amount of league of years can compare their kind of average finishes with one another. So, teams like Jordan or teams like Dex and Dana who are in the league but haven't been here all 5 seasons, their total stats are going to be a little skewed. So that's why I figured to put a little average one in here. So, I mean, Dex is average about 58 roto points, which is dead last, 58.2 behind Crimmy there. But all time, it's just hard to compare one versus next. There's something that stands out to me about this all-time leader here list, though, that I can't help but notice that there's some non-full timers in here that are a little bit above some of our current members. Eric,
Yeah.
how could that be?
Oh man, we just need these guys to step up this year. We need them to get up to the plate and start playing ball. Because yeah, Jay being gone, he has one full season less, and in some cases, some of these teams might not catch him in Roto score this year unless they step up. I mean, if Krim does what he usually does, 2 seasons less of fantasy baseball than Jay, he might still have less Roto points. So we need some of these bottom feeders to reach the cream of the crop here and start contributing to some success. But we shall see.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Crimmy needs 80 roto points, 79 roto points to tie to catch Jay all time in roto, and Jay
Well, there's
hasn't
a
been
chance
here for
if
for,
Tyler and
for a
Justin
year.
if Tyler and Justin, and it's possible you have like a 60,
Yep,
65 roto season. I mean,
yep.
that's they could still be right there too. Chris should be in the clear. Chris
Yeah,
should
we
be in
hope.
the clear.
We hope if Chris can just scratch and claw his way to 45 roto points there, then
Yeah.
hopefully he'll be okay.
But it's cool to see the gap. I mean, again, you
Yeah,
are the champion. You've said it, but to see a 75-point gap pretty much between first and second in roto, and then me and Phil are pretty much dead even, and then to see almost another close to 50-point gap,
yeah.
46 points between Chad and the next ones, and then a 20-point gap. So it really is kind of interesting to see where the success lies in that, and obviously to see the head-to-head who's gotten a little lucky, favorable schedules maybe here and there, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful with a good season here. I could extend, maybe get to a triple digit lead and total roto points this year. I'd need a heck of a good season,
Well, I
but
know we
we'll see
mentioned it
from there.
last time too, but look at Bryce's saves. Remember that one year he had like
Yeah.
four closers, never started a pitcher. So yes, he does have the lead in saves, but he
Mhm.
probably had a third of that in one season because of him starting all those closers that one year. And that's why,
Yeah.
again, in retrospect, he's got that really, really red number of wins quality starts because
Yep.
that whole year he started closers. Yeah.
He is last last in the league all time in wins quality starts. He still got more strikeouts than Tyler, but last in wins quality starts. But
Yeah.
yeah, first in saves. So I think he takes a lot of pride in holding that down. He's the saves man. Um, so with that being said, one thing I can't help but notice here is that as we go to talk about our teams here in a little bit, I mean, why is it that it feels like our top 4 or 5 teams there are also still like our top 4 or 5 teams in our offseason power rankings?
Yeah.
Why do we have such a clear haves and have-nots in this league? And do you feel like it's a problem? Is
Yeah.
parity an issue in today's league?
In certain cases, I might say like overall, but I think again, this is also going to be kind of cool to see over the time because Justin has made the head-to-head playoffs. Krim, I didn't even realize this, and I think I misspoke last time we did
Justin's
this.
made a championship.
Yeah, in the Ghost Pod, I think I've said that Krim's never made the playoffs, which actually isn't true. He has made the playoffs, and he has the worst winning percentage of anyone that's ever been in this league's history, pretty much for the most part,
Mhm.
outside of one season of Corey. So,
Yeah.
it- it's one of those things like, hey, they make it 1 out of 5 times or 2 out of 5 times. Okay, maybe that yes, there might be a little issue of parity there, but you're right. I mean, a lot of times it has been, but we've also seen Bryce have awful seasons, and it seems like these last couple of years has had some of the best seasons he's had. So overall, we'll see what happens, but yeah.
I
We'll
mean,
see if the top changes.
I think you mentioned it earlier, but I mean, shout out to Bryce because Bryce was a bottom feeder 3 years ago, and then Bryce went from being a bottom feeder to being first overall roto back-to-back years. So
Yeah.
he is the defending roto champ and was the
Yeah.
defending two-time roto champ. He wins
Yeah.
roto this year. He'll be going for a three-peat here.
A
So
dynasty of Roto there, yeah. And Chad's
yeah,
another one too. Remember, he famously went through his rebuild a couple years ago, and then all of a sudden, these last few years, his team's been pretty solid as well. So,
it's
um,
It's
Yeah.
weird how we haven't seen teams go from last to first outside Bright. Bryce is like the only one to really climb the ladder there. And I don't know if
Yeah.
it's like a delusions of grandeur kind of thing where it just teams just can't commit to the full-on rebuild soon enough and get enough assets to really blow it up in a way that's kind of significant to really set them up for the following year. It just hasn't been done right. I mean, Dana's maybe got a pretty good setup for next year for this year with some of his keepers, and he's looking to make a run, and he blew it
But
up
we've liked
last
his
year.
team
But
multiple years in a row, and it
yeah,
doesn't
but he
work.
had so many
So who
good,
knows?
yeah, he had so many good players worth trading too. So
Yeah.
I don't know how exactly it is, but I don't know.
I do
I
think
don't
it's
think
cool
I've
looking at the averages too, because the averages kind of shows. I know we did this last time. I think we did it off the site. I don't know if we did it off the
come over the
spreadsheet.
averages here. Here we are.
Just to see like where do you? I know you made this comment last time, and I do this too sometimes when we're assembling teams. Is like where do you kind of look at where you need to be at least to be average in some of these categories?
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting to see like you could easily sort that by runs and say, okay, if you want to
Yeah.
be at least in the top seven, this is about how many runs you need to score a year, and I think it's a cool little thing to look at to kind of use it as a construction tool if you need
Yeah.
to kind of see what you need to focus on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then luckily we don't have the COVID year in this, or else those
exactly.
stats would be really skewed. So at least all these are based off a 162 game schedule, and let's hope that for God's sakes that continues next year, or else we'll really have a fucked up spreadsheet
Yeah.
here. But yeah, it does add a lot of a nice added context that I would have to agree with you there. And so yeah, I think that can be helpful. Where it's just like, yeah, if I want to be top three in RBIs, if I want to be top three in home runs, top three in steals, like how many am I going to need in this
Right.
draft to be feel safe there? Where you can look at this and be like, well, maybe it's 143 is kind of like the cutoff for that's top two. So third would be like 134. I got to get down to 34 stolen bases if I want to be top three in stolen bases.
And if
But
anything, I remember we looked at this last time too. Stolen bases might actually be a little bit skewed
yeah, those are
because
skewed. Yeah, we took
because
a
of the
look back
pace.
last time. So
Yeah, because of yeah, we did look at the steals compared in those first couple seasons to these last couple with the pace of play changes, and it is actually kind of crazy when we looked at those numbers.
yeah, we had a three-way tie with 176 this past year. Before that, the league leader had 221. That was you. Second place 194, and then third place
That was my Ellie
154. So it
year.
was kind of yeah, it was your early year where it
Go
just
back to
kind of popped
pre
off.
pace of play, and it's going to be
And
nuts.
then, yep, pre. Oh no, this is I think the first year
First
where we
year.
had big
Yep.
bases. Chad had 217, and then before that,
Yeah, look at
league
that.
leader 145, and that was an outlier because second place was 110, and then
Yeah.
the year before that, the league leader in steals 120 with
Insane.
Phil 117
Look at
and
that
92. So
change. That
yeah,
is
I mean,
insane.
if we're talking about just like triple digit steals, 5 years ago, there's three teams with triple digit steals, then four teams. And then there were in the first year, one, two,
You're
three,
bad if you're
four,
not
five,
a
six,
triple
seven,
digit
eight,
steal
nine,
team.
10 teams with triple digit steals, with 100 steals or
Yeah.
more. And that's kind of been the pattern we've seen for the last couple of years. So yeah, things do change. And so maybe those averages are a little bit less accurate where
I'm a little curious too with just for fun, go back to year one or two on wins quality starts and go to now because pitchers are pitching less than ever. I'm curious, have we seen no, it's not gonna be as dramatic of a
Mhm.
shift, but I'm curious on that. Wins quality starts
Let's
122,
say
115,
yeah, I'd say, top three would be like about 110 to make the top three, then about 120, then about
a little less,
109
16.
and 111.
Dropped a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, some teams with more, but I feel like yeah, top three is just generally about 110 is where you
Yeah.
want to be there. So I haven't seen a big drastic change in that. Saves, I do feel like we are seeing a little bit more consistency with people playing two closers outside of
Yes.
Dave a year ago, who didn't really
Yeah.
go with any closers there. Matt's taking his spot there. Shout out new league member Matt, who doesn't meet any of his deadlines, but here we are. So happy to have him for now. And so overall it's been great. I mean, it's been a good season. It's been a quite a hectic off season. I think we're all ready to move on to the draft and get
Oh, yeah.
excited about that. So before we close the book on 2025, is there any big surprises here or anything that you want to gloat about? How many playoff teams you got right or any other big takeaways here?
Yeah, I think last year we looked at that. We both got 5 out of 6 playoff teams right based on our predictions and stuff like
Yep,
that.
we did.
When we do we'll obviously do our official power rankings after the draft, and all that stuff when we go through and pick our playoff teams and all that. And as I said, I got my method. You're going to hear me say it a lot tonight. I'm sure Kyle might a little bit too. With average draft position, I look at obviously we're going to look at value and all that kind of stuff. But my method the last couple of years has worked pretty decent on predicting playoffs. So we'll see if it continues. But yeah, no, I think it's a fun little recap, cool thing to look at. And now we got a new season in front of us, right around the corner. So we'll see if I think a dynasty though, Kyle, you got to get at least 3 and 5.
Hmm. Three and five
Okay.
would be
But
nice.
how many do you have? You have two. You
I
have
I
two in the
think I have
last.
two
You're
and four.
2-4 right now. Two in the last four.
Nope, I have two and five, so I just got my two and five. So I
Oh,
mean
really?
three and
Okay.
six maybe, but
I would maybe consider that that's the wiggle room. 3-6, I would maybe argue still a
yeah.
dynasty. But
So
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I don't know. Maybe sometimes I just kind of want to blow it up just to prove it can be done, kind of thing. Because
yeah.
I'm just getting tired of all this winning. And as Krim just gets to enter the chat here and just hear me talk about just how much winning is just happening over here. And so I'm just getting a little bored here. I just want somebody else to join me at the top here for our all-time rankings here. So
Yeah, you're the only one with a ring in the actively in the league, right?
Jordan. So not he's
Oh,
not a
that's right. That's
five-timer,
right.
but
I
he
forget he's not highlighted.
in
That's
his
right.
rookie season, inaugural season, I think he won a ring, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then he actually had to make roster decisions and have his own team. And then all of a sudden, okay, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see
So
how well he does now.
exactly. So yeah, I the only miss I had last year was I we like we said, we thought Dana's team was gonna be a lot better last year, and so I
Yes.
had him as one of the playoff teams. I thought he'd be pretty locked in, but he choked, he blew it, couldn't get it done, and so Dex took his spot. I certainly did not see that coming after on
And I
draft
remember
night.
Dex was one of those teams too. We said going into the draft, he could control the draft with how much money he had in. And there
Hmm.
are some teams, and we'll talk about that when we look at the draft coming in. There are some teams that can control this draft with how much money they have, and they need to in order to even have, I don't want to say a chance this year, but really a chance. I mean, against some of these higher teams, because we're going to look at some of the top teams, and I think me and you are at least in somewhat of agreements that the top teams are kind of still the top teams. So we'll see.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think Dex proved it can be done.
Yeah,
But I mean,
got
in
a
the
draft
grand
right.
scheme of things, I mean, Dex was the eighth best team last year, and snuck into the playoffs. So
Yeah,
we were all clamoring to play Dex in the first round. So I mean,
yeah.
that is also a little bit of an indictment there. But
And he did win his first round matchup, did he not? Yeah.
no,
Oh, did he play?
he lost to Phil.
Oh, he did play Phil in the first round. That's what it
So
was. Okay,
I
yeah.
think he would have lost to everybody that he played, anybody that he could have played.
And that's why we do not want to do 3-3 division playoffs, right? But we won't
Yeah.
open up that can of worms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds
There's enough
like
can
a
of
too
worms
competitive.
opened. We're keeping the can of worms closed.
Yeah, let's keep that can of worms inside the can, please. All right, so from there, let's go and talk about our keepers that have locked. So as we transition from 2025 into our 2026 season, we've had a few rule changes this off season. So a couple of different rule changes. We are going to change the division layout so that way divisions are going to be a little bit more substantial. We are going to have each team is going to play your division foes twice. There's going to be one team that you don't play from cross divisional, but you should play five or six out of seven of the other teams there in the other division. So, we also will be implementing D contracts for the first time. You're going to give the D to any player on your roster you want. There's no
Ooh.
limitations for that. You will add $20 to their contract, to their C contract. You can keep them an additional year. Eric, what are your thoughts on the D contracts?
I think it's going to add an interesting wrinkle. I do see where some people, and it makes sense where, maybe the drafts won't be as loaded. For example, going into this year, obviously some of the big C contracts are Skeens at, I think, $13, Woo at 16, Crochet at $6. We're going to see some of these guys in here, which seem to be obviously obvious D contracts next year, which would mean they're not in the pool. But at the same time, I also think it's going to make the drafts more dispersed throughout the years because there is a lot of players getting thrown back in next year not named Skeens, Woo, and Crochet. So that might mean the next year's draft will be. I actually think weirdly over time it's going to actually sprinkle in more through the drafts instead of having more of those kind of reset years that we've had before. And I know we're never going to have a full on reset like we did the first time around after year three, but there's a lot of players going back in next year. If you just sort by all who's a C
Yeah.
contract, this. So it'll add a wrinkle, and I think it makes sense to do it now. If we would have done this right away and said D contracts, we would have had some pretty rough drafts. But I think this is the
We
right time to
did
kind
have
of
some
try it
pretty
out.
rough drafts.
We did, but that was also because it was the first 3 years of
Yeah.
that cycle,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, and I know you talked about it before, we're not going to quite have a full reset ever again because the rosters are the way they are. But no, it adds a fun
So
little wrinkle. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, in my opinion, I feel like in that first year it was like 70% of the talent in the player, the top talent in the player pool was available in that third year. And then we're gonna
Yes.
have a lot next year, and maybe it's gonna be like 50%, where it's never gonna be a true 33%,
No.
kind of superstar thing. But I feel like over time it started at 70, then it'll be 50, then it'll be 40, and like that, the third, sixth, ninth, and 12th year will have a little bit to that, but I think the D
Right.
contract will level that out. I
I
think
think
it's gonna
so.
have negative ramifications. I'm not a fan of it. I've said them in the chat already, so I won't, get on my soapbox too much. But I just feel like if you take a lot, each draft feels like it's always thin on superstars, and the superstars are going to be the ones that are worthy of that extra $20. So at the very least, we're talking about a guy who was maybe drafted for $1, given a $5 extension to get to see, and then given another $20 extension. So we're talking $26 minimum at the
It's
very
the
least.
minimum.
So yeah, I know that's a minimum. So a lot of them are going to be $40, $50 players, and that's fine. So we're not talking about your average Joes being kept fourth year on a cheap contract. I mean, they got to be the studs, and so you're going to have
Gotta be
some that are
worth it.
drafted cheap. Your Garrett Crochets, your Brian Woos. I think of the future if they continue doing what they're doing, that they'll be really solid values. But I don't like that it takes away superstars out of the player pool for several drafts that we had so far, where we look up and down, we're like, man, there are not a lot of superstars available, and
I
that's even applicable to this draft too.
Yeah, I do think it'll make it interesting with some trade talks, though. Like, for example, I know Krim had pretend this rule was implemented. Krim had Cal Raleigh at the deadline, traded him, didn't get a ton because it was a rental. But could you
Yeah.
imagine a $26 Cal Raleigh this year? He's obviously getting that D contract, and Krim would have been able to get an absolute haul for him at the deadline. So I do think it adds a little bit of wrinkle in trades, in that context. So we'll see. And selling teams, if they got a bunch of cheap contracts and they're trying to sell off, we'll see what happens. But yeah, no, a little wrinkle. We'll see if it sticks through. Maybe after a couple of years, people are like, yeah, I don't really like it, but we'll
And
see
I
what
mean, and
happens.
it could pay. Suppose Garrett Crochet has Tommy John after week two. So Eric
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
Chris is going to strike me down for,
And the thing is,
he's
it
going to
seems like
accuse me of the witchcraft here.
yeah, and it seems like we kind of said in the chat the other day, you're gonna have to almost hit on prospects because these are not you're not gonna get a 28-year-old guy that you draft and then 4 years later they're gonna be worth a 20. Like I said, it's the Ellies of the world, it's the Skeens when he gets called up, it's these guys, maybe a Roman Anthony, but even you said he's gonna have to be worth 35 in a couple of years. So we'll see.
I disagree with you there. I'm going to have to disagree with you again. I think that there's going to be a large part of a lot of the prospects have a higher percentage chance of getting kept. Like, they're the most most
We're talking
recognizable.
unproven players though. Like for
Yeah,
example,
yeah. So we're
PCA
just
might
talking
be
about
kept at a
breakout
$20.
players.
Yeah. PCA
But I
might be
think,
kept at 31 next year, but we're talking he was unproven when Tyler essentially drafted him. I mean, we're
mhm.
not talking proven play, you know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah. So I think of the guys that we said are like even like the possibles. I mean, we're talking about gosh, let me sort this by if I can sort it by contract here. Um yeah, I suppose I can. But with all that we said like a Garrett Crochet, a Brian Wu, a who are the other ones we said? Brent Rooker. We have maybe Schoolboy would be pushing it. Let's
Got to
see
win
here.
another Cy Young. Yeah.
What's that? I don't think Shane Baz, but I mean, being
Wow.
I mean, for 27, it's not a stretch if he has a breakout season. He
Yeah.
has certainly hasn't performed like that, but I mean, he
But even
could
still,
have
look at all these players going back in next year. I mean, like I said, next
one.
year. And that's why I think, and when we talk about the draft coming up and we talk about draft strategy, I think you can overbid on players this year if you really need to go and compete because a lot of these dudes are getting thrown back in next year. They're not getting the $20 increase outside of the obvious ones. And that's why when I went through rosters, I counted maybe going into this year, like you said, someone could throw their arm out and then it's not. But I think there's 5 or 6 dudes on rosters right now that might get a D extension.
Yeah.
It's not
I
even
mean,
going to average.
Christopher Sanchez, PCA,
Yeah,
Crochet, Brian Wu. I mean, Eugenio Suarez being worth 32 is in the realm of possibility if he hits another
maybe.
45 home runs.
I mean, if Alex
Um,
Bregman's 32, right?
yeah.
Suarez is.
Ranger Suarez.
But we're talking, we're not even averaging one a team. We're not
Yeah.
going to get
Oh,
to
yeah. No,
15
no, no.
games.
I don't think it'll be like 15 or anything like that. But I just think that in general, I think it'll be a little under half are like actually drafted as prospects, which is what I kind of,
Yeah.
my assertion from before, which is like, well, if we name all the lists of like, there's maybe like 10 possibles that we could see right now as having a realistic chance. I think that of those 10, maybe like 3 or 4 of them were actually drafted before they even debuted. And so where you really had to take their flyer on them, like your Roman Anthony's of the world,
Yeah.
Skeens and PCA and some of those are like the ones where like yeah those are recognizable names they were drafted as prospects they were stars before they even debuted but for every
Sure.
one of those there seems to be like one and a half of the Brian Woos and the Christopher Sanchez's where we just got him Brent
And,
Rookers of the world that got him on the
and
breakout so
and to me,
just
that's where I'd
taking
like.
those I think is going to hurt. taking those
Yeah, and to
out.
me, that's where I like to reward those players, though. Like if you did hit on those guys, or maybe you did trade for him, whatever. Like I said, I know we worried about Prime and stuff like that, but as I said, I mean, Roman Anthony will be off my team by 24. Ellie would have been off my team by 25. So football, it's more of a concern, but in this, I think it's like, hey, here's almost a reward for hitting on that young player, sticking with him, because there's been times where players have been awful and they just stayed on the roster. You're keeping them. I mean, Chad's done that many times. Look at he's kept Yuri Perez. He's
Hmm.
kept, Shane Boz for as many years as he did. So it's almost kind of like a here's a reward for sticking with your prospect, the guy you like. If they pan out, they better pan out if they're going to be worth that much. Because, like you said, the minimum the player can be is $26. And that's if you drafted that dude exactly at a dollar. So we're
Hmm.
talking in most cases, it's going to be 30, 35 plus dollars.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's
Hmm.
got to be worth it. So I feel like they got to hit on it.
And
Yep.
they got to be good right away if you're going to warrant keeping them for the original contract. I mean, if you're going to keep, they got to be worth the $4, and they got to be worth $4 again, then they got to be worth $9,
Yep.
and then they got to be worth their $29 after that
Yep.
for a 4 year
I mean, if
span
Wyatt
where.
Langford has his breakout,
Hmm.
he could be, someone you might do it too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I can't remember if we said he was one that was drafted after he debuted. I couldn't remember if he was before or after for that one there. But I just yeah, like I said, I just hate seeing like drafts where it's just like even like today this draft where it's like, well, we have some stars, we have Gunner and we have Corbin Carroll, we have Ellie, but like none of the top seven guys are there, top seven or eight guys, and it's like the second tier stars are the only ones that are there. And it's like next year, all right, finally we can have a couple more Otanis and Judges, and you're like, well, like now we're opening up the opportunity for them to be
Yeah.
kept. And so
There's a
that's the part
lot,
I
though.
hate
I
to
mean,
see
like I
because
said, there's a lot of players going in next year because next year is again, quote unquote, what would have been another reset year
yeah.
after another 3 years. And that's why I think, again, we're going to see less and less of that as the years go on. But really, there is a shit ton of players going back. And even if you just Machado, Scooble, probably Yamamoto, Juan Soto, I mean, these are a lot of these we're talking top 10 players are going back in. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it'll be a juicy year next year.
And that's why I think more than anything this year, and again, there's two ways of looking at this. If we're going to start talking about 2026 draft strategy, again, I think teams can overpay for guys, and I think that's why a lot of people are keeping superstars this year because they're like, hey, like we talked about this on the Ghost Pod. Yeah, Jose Ramirez is probably around $46. Am I getting him at value? Yes, I'm not gaining dollars on value as you've said before, but like you just keep those superstars
Mhm.
at this point. If someone has to pay 50 for Ellie De La Cruz to make themselves competitive,
Yeah.
no, he might not be worth 50, but you could just toss him back in next year, whatever, I don't care. And then he's part of that massive player pool. And on the
Mhm.
other end, I think a lot of looking ahead to next year for a lot of keepers, you want to hit on the cheap players more than ever this year because so many players are going into the draft next year that you really want to hit on those $1 to $5 players so you can go in with keepers. Because there's some teams this year, Kyle, we're going to look at it that only have 6 or 7 keepers heading into this draft.
Yeah.
You want to go into next year's draft. You always want to go in with more keepers than you don't.
Having a lot of A contracts would be beneficial considering they don't get the $5 price hike, let alone the $20 price hike. So, I mean, having
Yeah,
a lot of guys from this year's draft that don't get any tax
yeah,
applied to them could be beneficial for a lot of teams
big to
too.
hit on. Yeah.
So, those are, I think, our major. There was one other rule change. I can't even remember what it was though. Do you remember? Do you even remember?
You did mention 2 playoff teams from each division. I know
Yeah,
you said the
I didn't mention
scheduling
that
changed.
specifically, but yeah,
Yeah.
two playoff teams from each division, and then two more after that. And then I feel like there's something else, but I can't remember what it was.
I know you
Uh,
mentioned we've had a record on the last pod. You mentioned we had, and we've had some since, but a record number of trades last year and a record
yeah.
number of off-season trades this year. The league is on fire. It is crazy,
I get people in my DMs being like, I don't know. I think if trades are down, people aren't trading. I'm like, well, first of all, what's your expectation? And second of
right?
all, like, do you like look at the damn numbers? Like, holy cow.
I honestly think every year this league's been in existence, I would not doubt because I remember we talked about this on like a trade deadline pod a couple years ago, and I counted. I'm like, Kyle, actually, we're actually a little bit higher than we are.
Yeah.
So I really do think every year we've actually the numbers I bet you have gone up every year.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to one of these days. I'm going to count them and put them somewhere in the archives. The
Yeah,
number of transactions by year, if I can put them at the bottom
that
of
would
the
be
screen
cool.
for each year of like how
Yeah,
many trades each team made. I think that would be a really cool thing to
I
look
agree.
at. But I mean, really, all it's going to be is just like how many trades did Krim make each year. It's really going to
Yeah,
be like
I mean
we
when we
don't
look
doubt
at
that
it,
he's going to be
him and
number
Bryce,
one.
him and Bryce started the offseason, I think, with the first three.
Yeah,
So
they.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, talk about cockfests. I mean, there's the Bryce and Krim cockfest
yeah,
that was just. I mean, they had some serious relations, friends with benefits there for a good part of the beginning of the
they were
offseason.
loving it.
So we had our keepers lock officially last night slash this morning. Well, 13 of us anyway, but two more got released this afternoon by a man who cannot follow directions, but misunderstood directions, I guess I should say. A reasonable mistake. I'll let him
Yeah.
off the hook a little bit. But as we look at some of the players that were dropped here, I can navigate over to the drop players screen. Do you have any like big surprises as of players that you were like, look at this, you're like, wow, I cannot believe that they weren't kept by their team.
For the most part, no. Like I said, I was really curious to see if Justin really was going to keep Pablo Lopez if his arm didn't bust out, because I think that
Mhm.
would have been a big overpay there. So I'm kind of glad that that decided itself for him. Really, the one that stuck out to me late was the Lodolo one. I mean, at
Yeah,
nine
that was
dollars,
glaring.
yeah, at $9, you're not going to get that in the draft. You're just not. Especially when we're going to look at the draft room here in a little bit and to see what kind of pitching's available. That one, and I don't even want to say it was just an obvious keeper to me to keep, but to me, there wasn't a ton of other ones that were like, wow, like they should have been kept. Again, especially with the injuries. I think especially with some of these injuries, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So, we'll see if some people kept guys that we don't think they should have kept, but in terms of releasing them, I don't think there's too many obvious ones, at least from my recollection,
Was Garrett
outside of
Mitchell?
the one.
He was a $5 last year. That one kind of surprised me a little bit. Seth Lugo, I mean, he traded for Seth Lugo too. A lot of these drops. I know somebody was surprised that Giancarlo Stanton was also dropped by Dex. So I was really surprised that he didn't keep more of these guys and he
I
kept the
think
guys they
Teoscar
did.
was one we wavered on in the Ghost Pod. We're like, man, do you keep
Yeah.
him in that lineup? I know he didn't really have as great of a year, but I think
Counting
that was
stats would
one
be
of those.
good.
Yeah, that was one of those that was like right on the edge. But that OBP, I mean, you really have to almost be elite in everything else if you're going to be rocking a 289 OBP. Like that,
So I
those
think
runs
that's
got
more
to
of an,
miss.
if you look at his year to year, I mean, it's kind of an outlier. It's not like he's got great three of the last 4 years, but I
Right.
haven't expected to be back over 300. But
You'd
I'm
hope. You'd
happy
hope.
he's back in the player pool at the very least. Jackson Merrill couldn't hang
Yeah.
on, huh?
And that's the thing too, where I think no, I did not trade him this offseason. I tried with people, but I was honest with him. I'm like, guys, I'm probably not keeping him. So I
Mhm.
mean, it makes sense. But I think some bad teams like when we look at this player pool, man, he's going to be right around the same ADP as Cody Bellinger and Seiya Suzuki. How much do we think they're going for?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
upper 20s, I'd say.
upper 20. So I mean, if Jackson Merrill being kept at 30 is probably about right, but I know it's probably just a tad bit of an overpay there.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't think I am ready right now to look at the surprise keepers, the guys that were kept actually, but I think I'll probably touch on many of them that
When we
as
talk
we go
team to
through the
team.
team by
Yeah.
team. I'm sure each team will have something where I'm like, damn, like he was dropped, but he was kept, kind of thing. What the hell?
One difference, and this is why the Ghost Pod was so fun. One difference is me and Kyle did, and we'll probably, have similar statements, but me and Kyle did think very differently on who we think should be kept and not, and it'll be kind of curious to see.
I wish could go back and look at like who we actually thought should have and shouldn't have and how it
Yeah.
actually shook out. But unfortunately we'll never know. Crim's the only one that can vouch for about
Yep.
25% of what was actually said that day. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, so it's gone forever. So I guess, it's as if it never happened. With I don't know if you have anything else keeper related, Eric. So you want to move on to draft strategy?
Yeah, let's do it.
I would like to start here. You guys actually don't have access to this, so if you're listening to the pod, good job by you. You're gonna get to see this firsthand. I did put together a spreadsheet of every past draft with the amount of which each player was gone for. Now, you guys all have access to this data. You just have to go back to different league pages and search on the draft history, and you can see that. But I wanted to like kind of color coordinate it and see kind of when guys are taken, how they were taken, and the dollar values in which they were attributed. Like I wanted to know, Matt was asking me, well, should I keep Bobby Witt for 60? And I was like, well, I wouldn't personally because
Right.
we've only ever had one player ever go for 60, and it was Ronald Acuna coming off of a literal, maybe the greatest fantasy season of all time.
40,
40
73.
homers and 73 stolen bases. I was like,
Yeah.
that is the bar for what a $60 player looks like. And you're going to keep Bobby Witt, who is a fine player, but not a $60 Ronald Acuna peak season kind of
He's a
player.
top
So
five fantasy player, and we're even still saying no, I would not keep him at $60.
correct.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a little price inflation here, and we're seeing a lot of guys like Juan Soto being kept for 55. Aaron Judge, I mean, I'm not arguing anything about Aaron Judge being kept for 50 plus, or I think 54,
Now
whatever
let me
he
ask you
is.
this, Kyle. You're a
Yeah.
two-time champ. I've done decently well, head to head and roto and stuff. I know you paid for Acuna there for 62.
Yeah.
In your recollection, how many times have you paid $40 for a player?
I actually wanted to look back at this, and I think I've gotten the top price player in the draft. I think like 3 out of 5 seasons or 3 out of 6 seasons. And I think it's usually something that it's something I usually do. I mean, so this is the year I didn't get Mike Trout for 55, but the first year I did pay 47 for Acuna, right, kind of right off the bat there. 2021, I'd have to, the data is a little bit weird. It's the one that got goofed up, and we had all those
Yep.
problems with it. I was willing to pay this year. This is the season I got Tatis for 39. I think that was the top player there, the
And that was the
2022.
that was the Mullins year, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no, the next year was the Mullins year, I
Oh,
think,
okay.
where it was where I got Michael Harris for 42, and then the next top player was Logan Webb for 37.
And the
And
contrast to that is I don't think I've traded for Jose Ramirez, who's $46 on my team, and I don't think I've ever spent $40 on a player.
that's really wow. And for the record, I mean, you are the third highest roto scoring team of all time. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I
I don't
think
think
that.
I've ever actually spent in the draft. I've traded for guys, but I don't think I've ever spent $40 on a player in the draft.
So, I mean, we're going to talk about this eventually. So why not just like bring it up now as kind of we're here as we're kind of talking about this. How do you judge a player's value in an off season? Because I mean, we talked about it last time, and so we'll
Yep.
get into it now. And we don't see eye to eye when it comes to player evaluations in the offseason. And I think we've been pretty vocal about that in the group chat, but I'm more value centric and you're more talent centric. So why
Yeah.
don't you walk me through like what the balance between those two philosophies is?
Well, I think that's what makes the league so fun is there is layers every year that make it a little bit different. I mean, it really, really does. I think kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where we just talked about it, Bobby Witt, right? I don't think Bobby Witt is worth $60, but I'll say this. If he gets thrown back into this draft this year, someone's going to spend close to $60 on him. I
Yeah,
mean, I really think so. It's
I would agree.
bare minimum, it's going to be $50 Bobby Witt's going to be spent on.
Mhm.
So to me, it really just matters on a year by year, case by case basis. And that's where you kind of have to look at it because there is so many layers. There's not a ton of pitching going into this year's draft. We'll talk about that. But to me, like we said it on the last, my draft strategy, for example, is Jose Ramirez. I got him for $46. That's probably around what he's worth. Some people would argue send him back in, get him back at an A, but there is just some security in saying I have that player. That player is mine. I know they're good. I am keeping them, and I think that's generally the approach most people take. Well, you take a little bit of a different approach of, hey, if that's at value, I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to get him at a few dollars cheaper or get him back in at an A contract. You sent Acuna back in, and I remember got him back on a year. You did that exact thing.
Yep.
So I really, and that's again, that's what makes this league so cool is I really think it matters on a case by case basis. Will I spend $60 on Bobby Witt? No. But do I think another team almost like Jordan? We'll talk about his draft strategy. His draft strategy with how much money he has and quite frankly how shit his team is, he has to spend money on big players. He has to. I mean, that's the only avenue he has going into this one. So I think it's interesting. Like I
Yes,
said, what's that?
yes and no. I mean, he has to spend his budget certainly, but does he
Yeah.
have to be stars? I don't know.
I think, yeah, I mean, we'll see. But I think for the most part, we've said this before, it's very, very hard to find those $20 to $30 players. It just is. Even if you go back in history and look at it, I mean, we're going to see some that are hit on, some that are not. But when you're in that $20 to $30 range, to me, that means you're not quite elite. You might be believing to be a breakout. You might have been like decently successful in your career, but you're not elite. You're paying upper 30s to low 40s for those elite players and the ones that you can actually count on. And that's where I think leagues for the most part are won. And I'm saying that literally saying I don't think I've ever drafted a $40 player before, but we've seen it happen before. And there's that weird range, especially when it comes to pitching. How many pitchers do we see even now in that $20 to $25 range? You're either paying 30 plus for a quote unquote ace in a sense, or you're getting lucky and getting a $5 to $10 pitcher that breaks out. So there's a little bit of the stars and scrubs approach, and I think that's what we're going to see with some of these roster constructions is the best teams, me, you, Dana, have elite players on it right now. We're not searching and going for more elite players, and we might be, but we don't need those in the draft while a lot of teams do.
Yeah, so I don't even agree with everything you said there, but one thing I'll say is that that has been proven time and time again, which is there are more than one ways to skin a cat here. And we have seen Jay do it, twice now, where he went into the draft with $41 to spend or whatever it was, and just the
Nothing.
team
And he
pulled up
won
some
both
plays
years.
and won doing it that way. And we've seen guys go in with needing a lot and be successful when you nail the draft. But I think the one thing that we don't really see a lot is like a team that was just built entirely through the draft of something that was just like a bunch of A contracts and just you really just I'm
Yeah.
going to start from scratch and do it again. Like you kind of have to start somewhere. So like in a lot of ways, I think there's merit to what you're saying, where it's just like you have to go into the draft with some kind of talent because there's just not enough talent in the pool in order for you to take out your wallet, spend your $300, and walk away with a championship level team. Like there,
Yeah.
unfortunately, like there's just that cannot happen. And so I think there's merit to that. The biggest disagreement for me is that and you alluded to this earlier, I will never keep a guy who I feel like I can get back for the same value or less. I mean, I said Brandon Nimmo. I don't think that Brandon Nimmo is going to go for more than $20. And if he does, then so be it. And somebody else can have him. But I'd rather just pocket the $20 with that. But to me, even I feel like even if Nimmo goes for 22, and maybe it's me, maybe it's not me, I still like the player, but like I would rather have Brandon Nimmo at a $22 A contract, and if he plays well, maybe he's worth me being kept next year, than having be like, well, no matter what, he's going to go back in the player pool. So he's certainly not going to be a $40 player next year. So like we know that he's not. That's not the kind of player that he's ever going to be. So like I would rather always just have the A. So I would never have even if you said, so what if Bobby Witt goes out and he's you have to draft for 58. Okay, so what? Don't lose him.
Yeah.
Spend the 59
Well,
for him or spend the
I guess
60
for me,
for him
my
and get him on an
perspective
A
is
instead.
from my perspective, would you send Jose Ramirez back in if he's right at a $46 value? I
No,
don't.
because I think he's worth more than that. I think he'd go
Okay.
for the low
Maybe
50s.
that's not a good example then. But I guess for me, it's one of those things where it's like I don't want to risk sending him back in when other teams have money and they can spend 55, $60 on him just to have him. And that's where it's almost like, does the risk really outweigh the reward in that sense? And in some cases it might, but in some cases it is a gamble.
We've seen teams going with money every year. And last year, Julio
Sure.
went for 47, and Tatis went for 50, and Acuna went for 40. So, I mean,
Right.
I don't think that we're talking about several guys going to be going for more than 50. When we had superstars last year of these guys, and I don't know if Tatis, Julio, and I don't know about Acuna. Oh, Acuna's hurt for the first month. So those guys were like the top five guys in the draft,
Yeah.
and that's what kind of makes JRM a tough spot because I think he's like fourth or fifth off the board in a lot
Yeah.
of leagues. So he really is in almost like a second superstar tier above anybody we would have this year. But
But then,
like
like,
I just
look at the difference in price of superstars. We can see right there Acuna,
Mhm.
Tatis, even Freddie Freeman, Julio, and then there's that next tier of O'Neal
Yeah.
Cruz 30, Adolis Garcia 27, James Wood 30. So there really is almost like that gap of like you need to spend that 35 to slash 45 to get that proven superstar, while the rest are kind of it's that next tier down. Yeah.
Mhm. So, I mean, I guess it is a little bit of a contradiction because if I look at the previous year, we did have Acuna 62, Bobby Witt 55, Judge 51, and Juan Soto
If
54,
Corbin
and
Carroll
Mookie
did
Betts
not get
52.
hurt, if Corbin Carroll did not get hurt, and this might make Ellie even go for more now because Corbin
Yeah.
Carroll's hurt, and Corbin Carroll might be back by opening day. They've said that. I truly think with the amount of money certain teams have this year, because there are some teams that have a lot of money, and even good teams, and we'll talk more about this later. I really think Ellie and Corbin Carroll would both, if they were both healthy, 100% going to the year, are going for close to 50.
I would say, yeah, I would agree. I think close to 50. I think people are going to get a little hasty once it gets towards 50.
Yeah.
Above 50 is a little bit of a stretch just because I look back at this 2024 where everybody felt like had money to spend because it was a little bit more of a reset here
Yeah.
with this year. And so a lot of people had money
Mookie down
and these
there,
were guys that
Soto.
were proven superstars, like the top, 5, 10 guys in the league. I mean, Acuna was coming off the great season. Bobby Witt had his big breakout rookie year. I mean, Juan Soto had that was his last year in Washington, was it?
Oh,
So where's that?
so many.
What's
Uh,
that?
I can't remember, but I think
Yeah,
that's
and so
and it's
like,
one of those things where
yeah,
I would have argued Juan Soto was not worth that much until literally, and we looked at his stats last time. Last year, he went from never having I think 20 steals in a season to having almost 40 steals.
yeah.
So like Juan Soto, as weird as it sounds, is probably to me and I think we've said this before. There's only three players in baseball I am spending $60 on, and that is Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and Shohei Ohtani.
In an
Those
OBP league, certainly Juan Soto's in there. In a regular league, no, but in OBP, yeah.
Yeah, those are the three players I would have on my team that are actually worth $60. Now, if Bobby Witt goes off and has a 40-40 season and all that, sure, but no one else am I spending close to $60 on. It's just a
Are you talking
teardrop.
about this year?
If they were all in the draft, yes.
I'd put Otani instead of Witt in there.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the
Uh,
three guys I'm spending 60 on. Otani, Judge, and Soda.
okay, you said Witt, so.
Oh, my bad. My bad. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think an argument could be made, but it's really hard for me to keep those guys at that when I just get them back and on an A contract for the same thing and have a little bit more flexibility. And maybe they go for less, and maybe they go for a few dollars more. And it's not, okay, I had to pay 62 instead of 60.
Right.
It's not really the end of the world. I'm willing to take that
And to
risk.
me, that's
But
kind of the
like,
strategy you have to take too, is to me, and I think some people fall off on this. If we're talking $2 or $3, I think you just have to get your guy. I mean, I really do. I think you just have to get your guy because
yeah,
at the end of the day, like you're gonna sit there and you've done it before. You're gonna sit there with some money left over, or you're gonna end up spending $8 on a dude that you could have maybe gotten for five.
yeah,
Like I don't want to say you're pinching pennies at that point, but like don't be scared off of a few dollars
yeah.
when we're talking these superstar talents.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's some merit to that, but I would not bank on Bobby Witt breaking the all-time record of dollars spent on a player at 62. I
Right.
just like he didn't put up that kind of season to warrant that. So like if I throw him back and get him back for 60, it's a net zero. So like
Yep.
I'm not gonna I don't think he'd go for 61, 62. I really don't.
Nope.
So to bring it full circle, I will say because I didn't really say like what my general philosophy is like I don't care about the talent on my team. I don't care how many top 100 players I have. And that's where the biggest differentiator you and I
Yeah.
have is like, we look at this go, like, I've considered making trades, giving up Acuna in trades where I'm getting downgrades in talent. I've considered giving up Sale because to me, like I only care about the overall value of the player in regards, and what I view as value is what I feel like what they would go for in the auction minus what the salary I have them for. So I would say Ronald Acuna, I feel like if he was up for auction this year, he would go for low 50s and I have him for 40. So if you go for 53 this year, something like that, and I have him for 40, that's $13 worth of value. If you offer me a trade that where I'm getting a player who I know that he's going to be, I'm going to have more than $13 worth of surplus value, I'm going to be hard pressed to not to accept that. Now, there's other factors in there because, and here's where I'm going to be a little bit hypocritical there, where yeah, there are other factors that affect it, but that's my general philosophy. And the other factors that
Yeah.
affect it are general positional scarcity. We have your positions that are like available in auction, and also each individual case of like what your team has and what it doesn't have. So I look at this auction and I go, there's not really a Ronald Acuna available in this auction kind of players. So that does kind of give me a little bit more of a reason to hang on to him. Where like if I were to trade him, it's hard for me to replace that. Unlike some years where we do have a little bit more of that caliber of player, but generally speaking, I am all for give me I'd rather have the $10 guy that is on a $1 contract than the $40 guy that is on a $35 contract. I would rather have the better value there. If I see it as a $10 surplus versus a $6 surplus, give me the 10. And
And that's
that's
where you said too, though, that it does sometimes vary
philosophy.
draft by draft and who's available. I mean, it does a little bit, and that's what I think
Mhm.
makes the league fun. Is every year is a little bit different in that because you do have to look at like who's available and who's not, and all
Mhm.
those things. That's why I said next year when there's so many people, I think a lot of people are holding on to their superstars this year between $35 and $45. We're seeing it. They are the keepers are locked. No one's
Mhm.
really cut those guys. But
Yeah.
next year, if that was the case, I think so many players are going back in that you're like, do I keep this $45 player or do I just there's 15 players that are now worth $45. I can throw them back in. So I do think scarcity of superstars matters as well.
Yeah, and I think we've even seen that this year with some of like the Julio Rodriguez trades and Tatis and
Yeah,
trade being kept. And like I don't think in any other year a lot of Julios and Tatises are being kept.
at
But I
that
think a lot of
price.
guys are looking at the landscape going, there's not really a lot of these guys available, so I'm gonna end up hanging on to
Yes.
them. There's not really a lot of guys that are worth me spending my money on, especially not any pitchers. So maybe I should just keep these guys. And I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do, if I'm being honest. But I guess that to each their own.
Yeah.
So, from last year's draft, do you have any like takeaways or anything, or are you just going to keep all your trade secrets to yourself here on like what you learned about the trends of last year's draft
Uh,
and how it kind of might affect this year's draft?
I always find it interesting. I never learn. I don't want to say I don't learn a ton from it, but I'm always curious to see like who gets nominated and who doesn't. Obviously, and like what orders there is. I'll be honest. I tend to throw. positions out. There's 14 of us, so it's not like you can totally control a draft based on who you're nominating.
Yeah.
But I tend, for the most part, to throw positions out that I feel like I don't need,
Yeah.
and let people spend their
I
money
feel
on
I
that.
feel like 13 out of 14 people go into the draft doing the same thing though.
Right.
So
I
yeah.
mean, for example, a lot of us, there's not a lot of pitchers available. If you have a full rotation like
Yeah.
yourself, why
Yeah.
not nominate all the pitchers and just say, yeah, spend
Yeah.
your money
Hunter
on
Brown could end up being the first nomination for
yeah,
me.
spend your money on Brown, spend your money on Snell. If I'm you, just to throw a wrinkle in it, I wouldn't throw Hunter Brown out, who's the obvious number one. I would throw Snell out and go, okay, are
Mm-hmm.
people spending 30 on him? Are they spending
Mm-hmm.
35 on him? So I think you got to set that barometer without doing the obvious choice. So to me, like for example, if me and you were the first two nominations, we got our rotations full, So there's a little bit of thinking with that. But the draft is almost like a living thing where like, oh my God, this was nominated, or the closers are going. If I had two closers, I'm nominating closers because there's so
Yeah.
many this year in the draft. There's a decent handful of them where I'm just like, let's have you just spend your money on these. Ding, 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 ding. Let's get
Yeah.
those out of the way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, overall, I don't go in with like a full-on draft strategy outside of like who I'm trying to target. In terms of like my nominations and stuff like that, it's just kind of a go with the flow kind of thing, I
Yeah.
guess, for the most part.
All right. So yeah, I think that yeah, I would have to kind of agree with a lot of what you say there, and that's what a lot of people say. But I think there's also a little bit of like you have to kind of figure out like what you need, nominate it, and go get it. Like if you're like I've seen guys that go in and are like, well, like I need there's only one third baseman left, and so I'm gonna nominate not that third baseman, and I'm gonna nominate all these other, and I'm gonna let people spend their money, and then all of a sudden like you either spent your money somewhere else, you don't have money for that third baseman, or everyone else is also waiting for that one third baseman to be nominated. Nobody else wants to nominate him because everybody's
Sure.
doing that same
And then they're
strategy of
overpriced.
don't nominate the guy you actually want. And then all of a sudden, everybody's just saved all their money for this one guy, maybe Mark Vientos, or whoever it is. And then you got to pay $31 or whatever it
Yeah.
is for that guy. So, I mean, sometimes like I'll nominate a guy, or I think we should anyway, and I'll be guilty of this of like, I'm nominating this guy because like this is the last guy in a tier, and I need to know if I need to find another strategy if I don't get this guy, because I feel like there's sometimes that as well. Like sometimes you got to nominate the guys you actually want, because you need to know whether or not you need a fail safe or not.
Yeah.
Like, am I just gonna spend 35 in this guy even though he's only worth 10 just because I need him, or am I just gonna let it go because I can have another backup plan? I need to know sooner rather than later. I think there's a part of that too. So if let's say we have this pie chart here, there's $100% worth of in this pie chart. What percentage are you giving these three different pieces of pie? I draft a guy because he plays for my favorite team. I'm a homer. I
Yeah.
draft a guy because this is a great value, or
Uh-huh.
I draft a guy because I just really believe in this guy, because I feel like there's a lot of different ways to look at this, where a lot of successful people go into a draft and they're like, I'm just going to feel the draft out. If I feel like there's a value on the board, I'm going
Yeah.
to get that player. As long as he fits a position of need, it doesn't really matter who it is. If I see a perceived value, I'm going to go get it.
Yeah.
And then another guy's like, well, I just want to, I'm going to draft guys from my favorite team. And then other guys are like, I'm going to go get the guys that I believe in most. I'll overpay for them because it's fine. Because if they do what I believe they can do, they'll still become values at the end.
I'm more of the value guy myself. I think it's probably 60-30 and then 5% drafting favorite team. I always like a Cub on my team, but that doesn't really change my judgment too much. But I'm more of a value guy. I'm gonna feel out that draft. I might not need pitching, but if for some reason Hunter Brown's at $22 with three
Yeah.
seconds left on the clock, you even yourself would probably say, yeah, I'm putting
Yeah.
him on my team. I just don't
At the
care.
very least, you're going to price enforce that.
Exactly. So I do think there is some of that. So I'm more of a value guy myself. I might have, and that's where I think sometimes, and you know me,
You,
I
you have
like
no regrets about price enforcing Roman Anthony last year.
yeah, exactly. You know me as I like being position flexibility, but I
Mhm.
also said this last time, and we'll get to this when we talk about, the Alex Bregman thing and Phil, is I also think you don't need to have like, yeah, in real life, you like your first baseman and your third baseman to be power bats, but like you can have your third baseman be the 10th best starter in your lineup in fantasy, and it's
Mhm.
not even a lineup essentially. You're starting guys, and that's fine. So
Yeah.
I don't like I said in the last show, in outfield. There's 14 teams, and we each have to start four outfielders. So that's 56 outfielders we're starting. Baseball for third base, outside of maybe a couple dudes thrown at utility or this or that, we're starting 14 third basemen. We're
Yeah.
starting essentially less than half of the league's third basemen, throwing a couple that might be thrown in utility slots. We're drafting at minimum 56 outfielders that have to start on our team. So that's where to me, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, hey, outfielders to me is actually a more valuable fantasy position than third base than some of these others, and that's why it's easier to find catchers and first basemen. So that's why I think you have to look at that somewhat as well. You don't find many great fantasy second
Mhm.
basemen. So do you spend a lot on a Ketel Marte? Do you spend a lot on a Jazz Chisholm? And then that's where I think there's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
I guess the other piece of that pie that I missed, which is drafting for categories too.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And and we talked about that last time. I really don't draft on that very much. I sometimes will look at my team pre-draft, projections and, oh man, I could use a few more homers. I could use a few more steals, but I never go in saying I need a 40 steal guy. I need a 200 strikeout guy. I don't really do that. I'm
a lot of
more of
people
the
do.
value guy. Yeah, I'm more of the value guy. Okay, this is good. I'm just getting him at that price. Yeah.
So I'm definitely more of like a get your guys kind of guy.
Yeah.
Where like I'm kind of ignoring categories for the most part. Like I have a general loose idea of like, okay, I probably need a few steals here. I probably need a few home runs, but like I also know that like we trade enough to like worry about that stuff later. If I leave the draft and go, I probably need a few more steals. Like I'll find some place to get them either on the waiver wire or via trade or pitching whatever else it is. But like I draft a lot of guys that I'm like, if they do what I think that they can do, like they're gonna end up getting stats and home runs and RBIs or whatever else it may be at a rate that is gonna make me be able to turn them into a trade piece or contribute to my team in the way that I would need them to. So I would say that for the most part, I'm not really a cat. I'm not looking at my team going, I need this many saves, or I need this many strikeouts, or this many home runs. I'm just like, I'm just going to draft guys who I think that are going to play well. And if I get halfway through the year and I'm like, man, I really need some home runs, I'll address that when I need to. But
Yeah.
I'd say like I'm more of like a draft. I'm like an 80% draft your guys, 10% maybe get a player at a value. Like one year, I wasn't planning on getting Mookie for 51, but I'm just like, yeah, Mookie for 51, sure. And
Yeah.
then I think I capped him the
But that
following year
also
even.
shows too that you got him at 51, you cut him this year, he wasn't worth it, and you still
Mhm.
won the title. You can
Yeah,
make those quote unquote mistakes of
yeah,
drafting a guy and it doesn't kill your season. I mean, you
yeah.
did it. You drafted Mookie. He was
I can't
probably
remember if that was the last
what?
year or the previous year though. I think it
You
was.
had him, you just cut him this year.
Yeah.
So you kept him at 51 and then he was going to be 56, right?
That was a year I drafted him. This was the year this is 2024, the year I drafted him. So
Yeah.
this is 2 years ago I drafted him. And I think kept him at 51 and then had him
Yes.
for 2 years.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, but it shows that you can still have that $50 player on your team and it not hurt you. I
yeah,
mean, mine was last year was
yeah,
Jordan Alvarez. I had him at
yeah.
$46, barely played for me, and I was still in the top four teams. So you can make those mistakes, but you better have the ammunition behind it. You better have other superstars to back that up. You can't not have superstars. And I'm going to say that a lot going into this draft. If we look at the draft room and we start kind of looking at what's available in the draft, like you cannot allow the rich to get richer. I know that's been kind of a
Mhm.
funny statement we've talked about with the
Yeah,
trades and all this and that. You
yeah.
can't allow the rich to get richer this year in the draft.
Chad is better at this than anybody. I get so pissed off at Chad when Chad ends up sneaking guys through, and I'm just kind of like, how did Chad get Jazz Chisholm for 27 or whatever it is? It's just like, well, how did you guys let this happen?
Yeah.
Because I guess, Chad being a zero-time champ, and I guess we pitied Chad for first 2 years of
Yeah.
the league, and he's turned it around, but I guess nobody really takes him seriously as much as me. I know I certainly got to pay the tax with everybody that I nominate or go after. So I want other people
That's
to
my
pay a
thing too, is
similar tax.
you can't really get a guy for $2 or $3 early because we even hear it in the live video chat. Who the hell is this? And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, like it just goes to $3 or $4
Yeah.
just because.
Oh
So
yeah.
you really almost have to wait to find those guys later in the draft as well.
I think I could put Tommy Pham up first for $1 and you guys wouldn't let me get him for one, even though I don't even
It'd be
know if
like
he's on a
three,
team. I don't even know if
four.
he's on a
Yeah.
team right now.
Yeah.
So I
People
think,
just
yeah,
want to hit the button.
yeah. So I mean, maybe that's the strategy. So it's just put guys out for $1 that nobody wants and see who's gonna
Yeah.
bite on spending two on them when they're not worth two. So I know you guys do that with catchers. You guys never let me get a $1 catcher. So
No.
that's why I just ended up keeping Salvi this year, so I didn't have to worry about that. Worry about that.
Yeah.
So before we move on to kind of our team by team, I got two more different questions to ask you. First off is about the actual player pool this year as we navigate over to that, and then we'll talk about a few predictions for
Yeah.
this year. So as we're looking at the player pool here, we have some top tier pitchers available. We have some top tier hitters available. I think it's a little bit more hitter heavy at the top than it is pitcher heavy, but that's not really abnormal for what we'd see in a
Oh,
regular draft anyway. So we got Ellie, Corbin Carroll, Cal Raleigh, Gunnar Henderson, Nick Kurtz, Trey Turner, Josh Naylor, Yelich. The pitcher's a little bit more thin. It puts the closers at the top for some. So let me just sort this by ADP here. Hunter Brown, George Kirby. Then we got a few closers here: Munoz, Diaz, Duran, Mizrowski, and it's just like, yeah, it really drops off quickly there. And then you're like,
I
guys that are
I think there's a
totally
decent amount
unproven.
of I think there's a decent amount of almost like depth of pitchers, but like if you're going into this draft and you need like an ace, you better get your ace like fast because there's not
You
really
can't
any
build a
ace.
rotation in this draft. I'll tell you that
Yeah.
much.
You cannot fill out an entire rotation in this draft. And it goes back to what we talked about. You need to have more keepers than you don't. And that's why I think in some of the cases where players were dropped, and again, me and you differ on this, why not just keep that dude for $2? Why not just keep that arm for $3? Like I traded Peter Brady Singer. He's a $6 guy. He had a 4 ERA last year, averaged about a can. Like to me, you just need to keep that depth on your team, even if they're not starters. They don't have to be
Mhm.
starters, but they're pieces that are at least good enough to be on your 26-man roster. And that's where I think you need to go in with more keepers than not. We had Tyler one year literally have to go in and draft 26 players to fill his roster.
Mhm.
You can see that number, it's locked in now. That number next to our money is how many players you need to fill your roster out.
Mhm.
I need 14. Tyler needs 15. Some teams, Peter, he's got no money. He's got the least amount of money in the draft, and he's got to fill the most amount of
Mhm.
spots.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to think of stuff like that. And that's where if he's at $100 left and he has 19 players he's got to fill, you're talking on average $5 a player, essentially. Like that's not a lot. So you just need to go in with more keepers and you don't. I think you're always going to find more success that way. And that's why I say keep the $3 player, keep the $2 player
Mhm.
as long as you know they're at least rosterable. And I think when you sort by ADP, and again, that's one of my favorite things is ADP and looking at that when you break it down, I would say when you get to around 300 ADP is really when you start getting into waiver wire players. So if you can at least keep guys that are above 300 ADP in that $1 to $5 range, I think you just do it. And I think oftentimes people cut them and then all of a sudden now they got to fill out larger rosters. Chad, we think is one of the better teams in the league. He's got to fill out 18 spots. I mean that's a lot. So
Yeah, 18 is not that big of a difference from 14 to 15, which is the maximum. I think he's Chad still in a pretty good spot there.
I do too. He's in a good spot. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it just you just add if you just throw a player back, you're just adding them to the player pool and just hoping to maybe get them back, maybe not, maybe go a different direction. But I will say this: there's going to be probably about 5 or 6 teams that are going to go into this draft thinking they're getting Hunter Brown. Like, oh, I'll get Hunter Brown for $35 or $40 or whatever it is, and then like, what's going to happen when you don't? How many people are going into this draft expecting to get
Where
one
did
of the best?
Snell go?
He was down there somewhere. There he is,
Oh,
down
is it because he's
ADP
hurt?
140. He's always hurt. Is he
I
ever
know
healthy?
that.
So
Oh wow.
clear to play catch, but maybe not ready for the for opening day. So, he was exhausted last year. Let's see here. Knowing
Yep.
there's plenty of pitching depth if he's not available for
Well, it's
2026.
interesting to see that some people's ADPs haven't like Snell's ADP dropped significantly, while a guy like Corbin Carroll's since his injury really hasn't dropped. I think he was 7 and now he's
Yeah,
14.
yeah.
So it hasn't really dropped that much. He might,
Well, I
and
don't know
that's
how much it evens out or what it pulls ADP from if it's
I
like
think
the
it's from
ADP
all
of
the
last
drafts
time.
for the
So yeah.
2026
So
season.
if it's
So
just the
that makes
average of that, then
sense.
it wouldn't really change a whole lot when an injury happens.
But it did for Snell. Snell was ADP 50.
Was he?
Yeah. Oh yeah. On our Ghost Pod when we looked at it a couple weeks ago, he was the second best
Hmm.
pitcher available,
Oh,
100%.
okay.
He was ADP like 50. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't remember. So you remember better than I do. But kind of same thing with the hitters. It's just like how many of these teams up here are going to go into this draft going, I'm probably going to get Ellie De La Cruz or Corbin
Yep.
Carroll, or Gunnar Henderson or one of those players. But like you, only one person can get each of those guys. So like, what happens when you don't get them, kind of a
And
thing.
look how
So
much money teams have though. Like
yeah,
who's gonna make that plunge? And that's why I think it's not unrealistic to think again going into next year when there's a lot of players being thrown back in. Why not spend $50 on Ellie De La Cruz, even if he's not quite worth a $50, even if you don't keep him? Some of these bad teams need to spend $50 on Ellie De La Cruz, almost 50 on Rally.
yeah.
Corbin Carroll, I'm really curious because who knows if he's ready for opening day, but like if someone's able to get him for 35 $36 because he's going to miss a month, now you're
Mhm.
talking about maybe Corbin Carroll is a keeper for next year. So I think even Nick Kurtz, you're talking probably close to $40. Gunnar Henderson's probably
Yeah.
close to $40. Ketel Marte being at second base, probably teams have money to spend. They need to spend it. They have to.
What is your prediction for Over under, let's go over under 50 for any positional player,
Can I say oh man.
which I would assume
If
would
I have
probably be
to
Ellie.
I almost want to say even, but if I have to make a guess, if it's over or under, I will say over.
I'm gonna say over two. I think that's somebody. I mean, Jordan. I mean, you got Jordan, Chad have a lot of money. I mean, Chad's in a great position to kind of
Yeah.
control the draft after having some talent, after having a good year. Dex is gonna have a lot of money. Like,
I mean, here's
and
one way
these
to
guys
look
are
at
gonna
it.
need stars, right?
One way to look at it is Jordan can almost spend $50 on a player and still almost have the most money. I mean,
Yeah.
Chad's there by a little bit and Spelly, but Jordan can literally spend $50 on a player and have the third most amount of money still in the league. And he needs,
Mhm.
I mean, he literally needs to. If Jordan does not walk out of this draft with one of those top 4 or 5 players, at least one, he's making a ginormous mistake because
Yeah.
I mean his team needs it. And
So,
there's some other teams that do too, but I mean,
yeah.
you just I guess my point is, and I said this on the Ghost Pod, I don't care, if it's affecting my team or not. You cannot allow me, Kyle, Chad, Dana to get a player for $50. You literally you can't allow one of us to get one of those guys. You
Yeah.
just can't.
Yep. I hate to agree, yeah, but
You can't.
I do agree. We
And
got to
we
throw
have the
ourselves under
money
the
to
bus
do
here.
that. You're a good enough team. You could spend $40 on a player and be okay with like, cool, I just spent 40. So like we have the money to do that. I almost went into the draft before all my trades with $60. I wasn't going to be able to do anything. But
Mhm.
if you let Dana, me, Bryce, any of those guys get one of those and look at the tier drop off. Gunner, Keitel, maybe, and then I don't want to say it's a whole tier drop off, but I really think there's the 4, 5, and then you start getting into the lower ranges.
Yeah, but I mean, can we imagine if we let, one of the top teams, like let you, me, or Dana like get Ellie, and then you're like, okay, now that's one less superstar, and then everybody that has money still needs their superstar. Like,
Exactly. You can't
it's
let it
hard to do
happen. They
that.
just
But
can't. Yeah,
there's more than one way to build a championship team. I mean, you don't have to have all the single best players if
I
you're
agree.
well-rounded
Yeah.
enough. If you hit on your breakouts and stuff, and that's how you build a sustained success. Is I don't think a lot of the guys like we talked about in the chat, like Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani have never won a ring in our leagues, right? So like you take like the best way out, Bobby Witt, I don't think ever been on a championship level team. So like the teams that usually spend and get like the top players or the top players in the draft aren't necessarily the ones that win the championship. I got Ronald Acuna, and he was gone for half the year, but it was also he was $40 Ronald Acuna. It wasn't the year I got $62 Ronald Acuna is not a year that I won the league. So I didn't win
Right.
Roto. I didn't win head to head that year. So when you spend the most and get the top guys, like there's not value. Is whatever you spend on Ellie, you're not going to find any value. They're not. It's not you're gonna look at this and be, oh, there's a steal there. Same with Carroll. Same with Kurtz. Like the odds of Nick Kurtz spending, gonna enunciate that as best as I can, of you spending $40 on him and then him being worth more than 40 is
Yeah.
very thin. It's very
Yeah.
slim that
Yeah.
that is actually going to happen.
But do teams that are bad need to just do it anyway? You know what I mean? Especially with how many players are being thrown back in, you almost just have to overpay. I feel like this year, and that's not saying the pool's bad. We've had worse pools than this by far, but I feel like some of these bad teams, they're still like the good and essentially those bottom four-ish teams. You just have to overspend. Jordan can literally spend he could spend $50 on 2 players and almost have the same amount of money as Krim.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you have to do it.
Yeah. With that, we have when you look at this player pool, did you look ahead to like the player pool and see the current free agents that we knew were going to be available or the guys that you felt like would be thrown back and make any trades based on what you thought like positional scarcity or availability or anything like that? Because I know like
Yeah,
for me, like I've been very hesitant to trade any pitching this
yeah,
offseason, knowing like I can't really supplement it in the draft in the way I would want to. Like I'm not going to spend $45 on Hunter Brown to try and, supplement getting rid of Chris Sale just,
I did.
because it's just not going to be possible. Have you made decisions based on that?
I have definitely because I know you've alluded to it where pitching has always kind of been a scarcity in the draft, and that's I think very true for the most part, and that's
I just think
why
it's the most prime for breakouts, in my opinion. I feel
yes,
like it's hard to like find pitchers that have sustained success over that many years, and those are the guys that are taken in the first and
well,
second round
well, like
and
we
guys
said,
that are
how many
kept.
times And like we said, you have to almost spend 30 or more on a pitcher that's like of quality caliber. And how many of those pitchers are you really willing to spend $30 on of those players available?
It's
Hunter
almost
Brown.
rare that a pitcher even gets kept for an entire 3 year stretch. Like, no,
Yes.
very rare the pitcher is good for all 3 years.
Right.
Sometimes they might be kept for 3 years, but that third year is like usually the year they get hurt or something like that.
Yep.
It's high turnover.
No. There's not many pitchers worth keeping that. And granted, I did look, and there's part of me that goes, yes, there's a scarcity of pitching, but if you really look at how many players are being kept pitcher wise, if you scroll down on that thing and kind of scroll down to not yeah, that the top graph where you can pull down and look
Oh
at
yeah.
the players' teams. If you really look at how many teams have around 4 to 5 pitchers already, there is a lot. So if you really look at how many pitchers are needed to be starters on teams' rotation, you're maybe looking at like 3 or 4 teams. So it's not like teams have to fill out entire rotations,
Yeah.
but at the same time there are people with three. Granted, Peter's one of them with Skeens and Wu and Alcantara, so he's in a good spot. But most teams do have 3 or 4 already. So it's not like we're talking full on things need to be filled. But at the same time, if you don't have studs, if you don't have at least 1 or 2 guys you can 100% count on, then it's scarcity. I look at Chad's team. I like Chad's team, but you're counting on a lot of Bubba Chandler and Yuri Perez to break out. Sanchez and Williams, a decent one too. It's very solid. But
Mhm.
if Yuri Perez and Bubba Chandler don't break out, now
You've
you have
changed.
two pitchers. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. Same thing when you look at other positions. I know the famous one's third base. You look at the
Yeah.
draft, and I know we
It's been
talk about
notoriously thin for a while, and that's kind of
yeah,
why I brought it up. Is what you've traded a few third, you've acquired some third basemen, but then you've kind of traded them away.
yeah, and that's the thing too is you look at third base. How many teams already have a third baseman? 9 or 10. So when we look at like third base being a scarcity, that's true. But if only 4 teams, 5 teams, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams need to fill a third baseman.
There's a lot. There's a lot less than seven solid third basemen available in the
No,
draft.
but there's 7 starterable fantasy third base, and that's kind of my point. When you look at Austin Riley, I know Westberg's
But you
out,
also have, yeah, I guess
but you
Jazz
have
is technically third base too.
right, but you have 7 startable third basemen. Riley, Murakami, obviously someone's going to take a shot on Paredes. Well, obviously we don't know his starting situation, but you don't need to have your third baseman be the third, fourth best hitter on your team. Catchers, everyone didn't want to
I
keep catchers because I think everyone looked at the pool and was like, "Wow, I'm cool with a lot of these dudes just being my catcher."
Yeah, that proving my catcher point that I've been banging the drum on for so long, and just for me to this be the first year I'm actually keeping a catcher in Salvador Perez. Finally, in the first year where it actually makes sense that my point is true. But yeah, with you. I'm with you on third base. Where there's been times this offseason where I'm like, man, I really got to find a third baseman via trade. I really got to go get Matt Chapman or
Right.
J Ram. I've hit you up about or Jazz or Suarez from Chris, and I'm like. Yeah, I don't want to go into this draft needing a third baseman because there's one available in the top 100. But then, yeah, actually looking at third base, there's actually a lot of names I like in here. A lot of my
Yeah.
favorite guys. Here's my guy down
Lewis,
here.
Muncy, Montgomery's down
So
there. I mean,
yeah,
they can start on fantasy teams. These aren't guys that you're putting on your reserves. And I guess that's kind of my point is I've always, you know me, I've always liked that players can be flexible and play multiple positions because then you can kind of move around in your lineup. But I never, talking about draft strategy, I never go into a draft thinking I absolutely need to have this because it's weak at this position or I need to, I just don't. I mean, look at first baseman. Almost every team kept a first baseman this year. Almost every team. And
yep,
and there's still first baseman in the draft where you're like, they're at least serviceable. I mean, there's only what, 4 first basemen, 5 that are going to be drafted. If
yeah,
you look at the first baseman of
yeah,
it, if you look at the first baseman available, I mean, there's a handful of, I mean, there's going to be a lot of starters out of that
yeah,
group. So
yeah,
and 10 of them have already been kept. So
yeah.
I never really look at positions as like, I need to get this or because there's less of this. And that's why, again, we're going to talk about Phil's trade. We just talked about how there's a pitching scarcity. Max Fried would be the second best pitcher in this draft, and he gave it up for Bregman just because there's not a lot of good third basemen.
Stop saying that because you're spreading fake news.
That's true.
Bregman and Valdez.
But Valdez wasn't kept.
Yes, he was.
Oh, he was? Okay. Well, my bad.
That's
But
like that's what upset my dad when I was talking to him on the phone. He's like the whole thing about trading Freed for Bregman is like why do we keep spreading this fake news about all this and that? But we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the trades and stuff team by team.
but
But
Valdez also is
yeah,
not going for 37 in this draft when you look at his ADP and where he's at. That
that's
that is
a
true.
story
You
for
wouldn't
another.
have kept him.
That's a story for another. That's a digression for another time. Um, yeah, so I think that there's some a lot of merit to that is, and I do look ahead. I'm guilty of this too. So being like, all right, what's actually going to be available? What can I actually supplement, especially in the draft, where like I look and see like, oh, I didn't mind throwing Fairbanks back because I'm like, there's other closers in the draft. Like
Yeah.
so what? I can get a $10 closer. There's going to be other options there, like the other decisions that I made. And I was actually hanging on to Fairbanks for a while. I kind of didn't really want to trade him, and I regret not trading him sooner. I like Fairbanks, but it's
Well,
just not really a necessity to keep them. Third base, I kind of like. Second base is really weak, actually, when you look
that's notorious fantasy though. That's
but
probably
it's
the
like
weakest
you,
baseball
if you
position.
don't have Ketel Marte, like you're not really at a disadvantage, like in third base.
Now I will
Shortstop
say
has a little bit
this
of a
though.
drop off.
I'll talk about this though. When I mentioned the outfielder thing earlier, how we each have to start four outfielders. If you scroll down and look how many teams still need at least bare minimum two outfielders,
Hmm.
I mean, there's quite a bit that need three, three, two, three, three, two. And that's, I guess, my point of like, that's why I look at outfield as almost the most valuable positional position in fantasy because a lot of players need outfielders. And when you look at the list, sure, there's guys you can like, but eventually there is that drop off where you're like, man, I don't know if I'd really like to start some of those guys. Again, when you start getting into that 250, 300 ADP range, it does start dropping off. Granted, you're always going to have more outfielders because there's more of them, but you still, every team has to start for, and that's not counting people that have them in the utility slot. There might be someone who already has a nasty outfield and they draft another outfielder because it's a utility slot. And then when you start getting to the Trent Grishams and the Adolis Garcias, you start wondering, okay, like if it starts getting a little dicey.
So if we count here, and that's like the superstar thing that, everybody's got to get a superstar, this and that. That is the thing that is terrifying about going and spending your $40, $50 on a superstar is that you also have to realize that, okay, so I just counted there's 24 open outfield slots. Now that doesn't count people who are positionally versatile or are going to play outfield, aren't going to play outfield and whatever. But just based on assuming every outfielder here is an outfielder and not playing anywhere else, like ignoring Jack Caglione playing first base or whatever it may be, Trent Grisham would be the last starting outfielder drafted, but that also doesn't include utility spots. So if we think about
Right.
like half the utility spots might be outfielders, if we go another one, two, three, four, five, six,
Just a
seven, eight,
handful, yeah.
nine, 10, maybe we'll go 10 down because some already have utility spots.
Now
Then we're
you're getting
talking
into non-startable guys. I
we're
mean, these
talking
are
Brendan
really,
Donovan, Jordan Beck, Dalen Lyle, Willie Abreu, Spencer Steer, Giancarlo Stanton, TJ Friedel. Like those are all like starters in your in your lineups based on just raw numbers of what we're looking at here. Mickey
yeah.
Moniak, Evan Carter, Dylan Beavers. I don't even know who that is.
But we're talking these have to
Trying to
be
think.
like the worst players in your lineup if you're going to
Yeah,
start
and
them.
these are people
Yeah.
that are active players. So, and
Yeah.
everybody says, "Oh, I'll just get $1 players at the end." Okay, are you comfortable with Dylan Beavers being your starting outfielder or your starting utility in this league? So, I think there's a little bit of give and take to the whole. Just go get your superhero. I'll just get the $1, $2 guys because unfortunately, like it's easier for a rebuilding team to go in and be like, yeah, I'll just get some dollar prospects. I'll get some Justin Crawfords or whoever else the
Yep.
other maybe potential breakouts are down here. Maybe Parker Meadows or Owen Casey kind of thing, but
Right.
I'm not comfortable starting Owen
No.
Casey week one kind of thing. So
And
that
like a
part of
lot
it
of
is
people have to fill outfields, and that's why I've always generally, and again, I don't look at it completely like that, but that's why, like, if I'm trading a superstar for a superstar, and let's pretend they're the exact same price, I'm traditionally almost always going to go with the outfielder, just because I tend to think it's a little bit more of a, I don't even want to say scarce, because I think in the waiver wire you can find those guys we just listed and just kind of throw them on your team. You might not be able to find that second baseman or that third baseman theoretically, but I feel like because of the volume of outfielders, you need to really shore that position up.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there are positions that are more scarce than others, but yeah, it really goes into like, have you actually done the math on how many people need second baseman and what if you get the worst at second baseman? Catcher is looking a little bit better. But I will say so we have what one, two, three, four people keeping catcher, three people keeping catchers, I think, in the league.
11. But if you can count
So
11 and
11
be
are being
okay with it.
drafted. The thing
Yeah.
about catchers, and I thought about Salvador Perez, is like there are a lot of good catchers, but if we go one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 11. I don't know if I'm actually happy getting like the 11th guy of getting like Yainer Diaz or Real Muto or
Right.
Basayo
But then
or
you probably
Javi.
are literally talking dollar players.
So,
Yeah.
but like normally I'd say yeah, but just because like it almost makes my dollar catcher argument is like, well, if all the catchers are bad, I'll just get the best of the bad catchers for $1 and spend that money somewhere else. With catchers getting better, you might be at a little bit of disadvantage if you're starting Samuel Basayo
Ooh,
or
stay
Yainer
off him,
Diaz
man.
going
Go ahead,
against
stay off him.
Drake Baldwin and Augustine Ramirez. So maybe it is going to be a year where we see catchers go for a little bit more.
Yeah. I
than they
definitely
normally
think
do.
those first five will all break $10. I mean, definitely Kyle Raleigh, obviously, but William Contreras, Ben Rice, Hunter Goodman, we're going to see those in the
They
10 to
should.
20 range. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what did these guys do last year? I mean, they tore the cover off the ball. Hunter Goodman,
Yep.
as was in Phil's outfield, he was playing him because had
Yep.
31 homers and 88 RBIs. Didn't matter that he was a catcher, kind
Those
of
top
thing.
four or
So
five guys are all going to go for at least $10, $15. Yeah, and
yeah.
then it'll drop off. Yeah.
So I think there's some merit to it there. And I mean, Adley only played a part of the year, but yeah, underwhelming. But I feel like a lot of people are still going to believe in Adley as well. So, um, yeah, I think that there's going to be some interesting things. So I think that just about covers just about everything we probably need to say about this draft before we go to our team by team. But I guess last thing, over under $45 for Hunter Brown. What do you think?
I'm actually going to say under. I think he goes. I think he goes around 40. Yeah, and again, if he's one of the first couple thrown up, I could actually see a team getting him for a little. It just depends where he's thrown out. Yeah, and that's why I don't know if I'd throw him out right away, but I would throw out. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to say under because in the history of our league, there's been three or four pitchers that have gone for over 40. I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot, less of a track record than you'd
I
think.
think Cole, Pablo Lopez are obviously last year, but there has not been a lot of pitchers in our history in the league that have really ever totally hit that mantle.
Yeah. So last year, our most expensive pitcher was Hunter Green for 31, it appears. A couple others that went for 30, Joe Ryan 30, Strider 28, kind of thing. That was last year. So we're again another year we didn't really have a lot of quality guys, but Garrett Cole 46, Corbin Burns 45 in the big reset year, Pablo Lopez 41, Zach Gallen
Yeah.
34.
But I think those are like literally
True.
three of like the five times pitchers have gone for 40 was all in that
But they're
draft.
also, yeah, they're also like aces again. They
Yeah.
were the top kind of guys available
Yep.
in the draft at that time. Giolito coming off a good year, Logan Webb for 30, and then 37 for Logan Webb. So I think this is probably a good comp here was 2023, which is again the last year before a reset year, which is where we're at right now, which is Logan Webb for 37. So.
Yeah.
I think looking back at that, I would put what we think Hunter Brown will be as a slightly above what we thought Logan Webb would be last year. Because I don't think we ever thought Logan Webb was like a top 8 kind of guy. And maybe Hunter Brown is, I'm giving him too much credit, but
I think that's
I
where
would
it's
say,
because I actually think Logan Webb and Hunter Brown's ADP this year are actually almost identical. So I think that's
yeah.
actually a pretty good comp. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wonder what Logan Webb's ADP was that year compared to
Yeah.
what
No,
Hunter
I know what
Brown's
you
was
mean.
this year.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna predict 42 for Hunter Brown, and I'm gonna predict 52 for
Yeah. I feel like
for
that's pretty safe.
because people have their art for Ali De Cruz. People have their arbitrary like we do this where we're like, oh, 50 is a big number. Oh,
Yep.
like there really isn't a difference between 46 and 48, but there's a difference between 48 and 50. And I feel like people get to 50 and they're like,
The
oh,
big
it's at
round
50.
number.
I'll go one more, but I'm not going to go higher than that. Like,
When we've
kind of
said
a
this
thing.
before
But
too, where salaries, it's not that they don't matter after the draft, but in a lot of ways with how you're constructing your roster, like there's a lot more flexibility the second the draft ends with being able to trade salaries and this and that and the extra little bit of cap thrown onto that. So like salaries, yeah, like kind of making your point even make more sense. Like don't squabble at 48 or $52. If you want your guy, get him at 52 because right when the draft ends, it almost like doesn't matter as
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I would have to agree there. So, anything more to talk about draft related before we get into our team by team?
No, obviously we don't want to go completely over what we think the draft's going to be and how it's going to roll. So we got to leave some mystery up to that. But
Yeah.
let's take a look at these teams pre-draft and kind of see what we got.
All righty. So, we'll go team by team here. We'll probably just take like an alphabetical, right? So we'll start with the
Do you want to
bad
go
news.
division by division?
I don't have the divisions pulled up in front of me, so I just go
Okay,
alphabetical, makes it easier on me.
that's
So,
fine. Oh yeah, that works. That's
um,
fine. Yep.
so we can go. We got bad news Bears first. So welcome Matt to the league. Here is team here. I'll zoom out a little bit here so we can see a little bit more of the team here. So looking at right now, he's got 10 keepers. Dropped two more this morning. He's got Torkelson for one, Terang, Chapman, Witt for 60, aforementioned, Sal Frelick for one, Logan Gilbert, Mackenzie Gore, Clay Holmes, Drew Rasmussen, and Ryan Weathers. This is a team that I thought was kind of a little bit behind the eight ball joining the league. It's one of those like, hey, you want to join this league? Sure. Here's the team. Fuck you. Like kind of a thing where it's just like, man, you didn't really make it easy on me. I did not like the first trade that he made, as we'll go through, click on his trades here. But in general, I think that he's done a pretty solid job rounding their roster together and turning it into one of not the best rosters, but certainly he's made some positive changes. And I think he's come out on the winning end of some trades. I think a lot of the league members have shown him some pity here and really given him a few layups here. So, what do you think of some of the trades that he's made? Do you want to go one by, I guess it's only fair to go one by one considering we never got it. So, is there anywhere you want to start or just want to jump right into the trades?
No, I honestly kind of agree with your statement. I think for the most part he's done a good job. I know we talked about the Julio Rodriguez Bobby Witt one, and in a sense it really does kind of come down to who do you like a little bit more because is Bobby Witt probably a marginally better player than Julio overall? Yes. Is he $13 worth more? That's where we can really debate whether it is. But as a straight one for one, they're both being kept. They're both superstars by all means. That's the way it goes. But no, I agree. I think for the most part he's done a really good job in these trades. I think getting Terang, who I would argue is kind of in that superstar range ADP wise for that cheap price. I think getting Matt Chapman at that cheap price while giving up a couple really hugely injury concerned players in Mike Trout and Shane McClanahan. Being able to get he got Lazardo and Rasmussen for Green and Ragans, trading two aces, two guys that are in that top 50 ADP. We look at it, Ragans and Green would have been the second and third best pitchers available in this draft. They're
Yeah.
at good prices. If we think Hunter Brown's going to go for 40, Green and Ragans are right there with him in ADP. They would have gone for close to 40 as well. So I think he did a good job though in getting Lazardo. Didn't love the overall trade, but again, goes right back around, does trade Lazardo. And gets Gilbert and Gore. Overall, I'm right there with you. I think the makeup of his team, he's gonna have to draft well because he's got a decent amount of keepers to fill or a decent amount of spots to fill. But a dollar torque, everything. I think he's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. All right, well, that was a pretty in-depth rundown of everything. Do you want to go through and oh man, we're doing the same thing we did last time where I'm frozen with the incredible face there.
Oh man.
Oh
Oh,
no,
there you
oh,
go.
we're back.
Just make
All
sure your
right.
face is pretty at all times in case your
Yeah,
face is
yeah.
in.
All righty. That was I did not like the breadcrumbs of what that was leading to. I will say I think it was the last one getting erased was partially my fault because my laptop didn't have enough space, and so I deleted a bunch of stuff, and I think I just ended up deleting the recordings. I had to delete a bunch of my
It happens.
old documents. So but anyway, we have the first trade here, Bobby Witt, Julio. I think this one is one I did not like at all. I think that I can't give it an F because I feel like you said, there is something to just getting your guys. And, it's hard to criticize. Well, if he's a Kansas City fan and you're getting Bobby Witt, a top six player in the league, like it's hard to really criticize that no matter what the price is. You just get acquiring talent, but he didn't really give up much because I don't think Julio is much of a keeper. And I know a member of this Zoom right now has Julio Rodriguez right now, but that won't be a surprise or breaking news in any respect. So I think that's more of like a D. If I'm comparing Julio to Witt, I would rather have Julio at his price than Witt at his price. So I don't like the value of it there. So I don't overall like that. What grade would you give that?
Yeah, I'd probably give it a B. I mean, I think it's fine. Like I
You came
said,
out, you think so? You think he came out ahead? He got better in this deal, adding an extra, I think, $13 of salary and turning
oh,
Julio into Witt.
overall, I do think it's a little bit better. I mean, I know Julio really bounced back and did a good job last year. The only thing that worries me is Julio has kind of had up and down years, while Bobby Witt really hasn't. Julio's year last year was really solid, but I think Bobby Witt still has that next gear going forward. I think the Royals are actually going to be a pretty improved team this year. They moved the fences in 10 feet. All those kinds of things. They got Caglione coming up there, Pasquinito coming up. Salvi. I think the Royals are going to be kind of sneaky this year. So overall, I think we're kind of spreading thin here. But I think Bobby Witt's got another gear that we've already seen Julio have. So I would overall take Witt over Julio.
What would you say? What makes Bobby Witt better than Julio?
I think OBP traditionally he's been better. I think steals the last couple of years he's been better or very close to. Yeah, better in
340
steals.
OBP compared to 331 for Bobby.
He's had more
But
steals both years. I think
I
if you
I think the upside in Julio is almost higher than the upside in Witt.
you know, I think
I
if you
just
ask
I don't think
anyone
that
in
there's
baseball, they'd say they'd take Witt over Julio 10 out of 10 times.
I think so too, just generally speaking. But I just feel like, I mean, with Julio, Julio, it's just the question is he going to perform in the first half or not? If he just is the person he was in the second half for a full season, he's going to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases. It's going to be, basically a step below a Ronald Acuna
Nope.
peak season kind of a
No
thing.
Jorge Polanco, no Eugenio Suarez in that lineup.
Yeah, could be an impact on the counting stats there, and but it's not like well, maybe if the Royals lineup does take a step up, then we're going to see a higher level of counting stats
And that
there
was really kind
and
of a quote
all that.
unquote down year from Whit when you compare it to the
And that's
last.
kind of what I'm saying, but it was also a down year for Julio because I mean, the first two months we
No,
were
he's had
standing there
worse.
going like he's got no value, kind of a
Look at his
thing.
second year in the bigs. Look at his second full year in the bigs. He's had back and forth bounce back years. Look at
Yeah,
that
but that's
second
kind of what I'm saying. Like his upside is kind of there. It's not really that
year.
much
Yeah,
below what Bobby's is.
and that's what I'm saying.
I'd
We're
rather have
splitting
Julio in
hairs.
the $13
We're splitting hairs. I
for
agree. I mean, I
for
think
sure.
you could go either way. We're really splitting hairs. You can go either way.
So I didn't like it. I wouldn't keep either one of them, but I would rather have Julio at that money than wait at that money. So next he got Terang and Caballero from Phil,
Killed it.
and then gave up Ozuna, Polanco, and O'Neal Cruz. You
Killed it.
like this one or didn't like this one?
I love it. I mean, Caballero was a keeper. Terang was. I mean, if you look, Terang's a $13
Caballero
player.
is not a keeper. He threw him back this morning.
Oh, did he? Okay. So, but even still, okay. So Phil kept Polanco, right?
Yep.
Bryce kept Terang. Let's look at it almost as a straight one for one trade here.
You mean Matt?
Polanco's like ADP 200. Terang's ADP, what, 40? And he's a $13 player. You got to hit more.
Yeah, they're more there. Okay. Yeah,
38. So we're
that's
talking a
high.
12 we're talking a 12 sorry, a $13 difference in price. The same we just talked about Witt and Julio, and Terrain clears the bar. And I like Polanco. I'm not saying he's a bad value at a dollar. I think any team in the league would love him at a dollar, but Terrain is the clear and ahead away guy in this. So the fact that you can look at this as a Terrain for Polanco trade, Spelly destroys Phil on this.
I don't agree. I think that for Jorge Polanco being a dollar is something that is I think presents a higher potential upside. I will say
What?
I'm underrating the actual draft how valuable Bryce Trang was last year and how
He was
good he could be
disgusting.
this year. But like I mean, he had 18 home runs and 24 stolen bases. Like if that's what you're getting this year, and that wasn't a full season, like that why would you draft that in the top 100 even? Like I don't really get like the jump there.
What are you
18 homers,
talking
24
about?
stolen base. Like
He's
Brandon Nimmo
literally,
puts up better numbers than that.
but here's the thing. He's literally like doing everything he's doing everything at the bare minimum at an average level.
So is
OBP,
Ian Happ.
hold on. OBP is a plus at 359. That's a huge plus, honestly, from the league average of what 330 we looked at. You need to be like in the averageness of OBP. Okay. Steals 24, that's a plus. You're not getting most of your guys getting to the 20 steal mark. 80 RBIs is probably right around when you're saying that maybe not a plus attribute, but that's an average attribute. So now the runs is 100. That's an obvious plus. He's doing everything for you. He's doing everything. I wouldn't quite say a five-tool player, but he's doing everything for you.
I don't know about that. So he's basically all right, let's see here. We can compare all three Durang here to who did I say? Ian Happ. Okay, there. If we compare all three of those players and what they did last year, here's my compare list here. I don't think there's going to be that big of a difference between these
But we're
three
talking
players
about the
here.
trade with Polanco though, too. We got to throw Polanco's stats in there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but Polanco I also think is like primed for
He's
his
older. Bryce Trang's 26, Polanco's 32. What do you mean he's
but
primed
he's
for
also
a
getting into
level?
a much better lineup there,
Yeah.
upgrading into being in Seattle's lineup now, and he's a dollar, and he's got more positional versatility there, and I think he's going to hit cleanup for
We're
Seattle,
looking
right?
at
Oh,
2025.
I
He's
am.
on New
He's on
York.
the Met. Yeah, he's on the Mets now. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
So he's in a
But
better
but
lineup on the Mets.
but if you're looking at those stats, yes, Turang's the best player. He's got more runs. He's got second most RBIs.
Yeah,
He's clearing away the most steals, clearing away the OBP. There's a reason why his ADP is 40 and none of those other guys are.
I just don't see. I don't see that being like that much better of a player than those other guys. I'm just saying
And
because
let's throw in he plays a more valuable position. Like there's not many great
we just
second.
got done saying how valuable outfield was. Now, Eric, come on now.
Well, I'm just saying there's not, but there's not really any good fantasy second baseman once you get past those first few. Terang, Marte, and then
Here, here's what I'll say.
Jazz.
I think that he certainly is the best player and the best stats looking at this because of the steals, because the OBP is better than all these players. Yes, here. He's got less power than Hap and Nimmo. He's got less RBI, not less RBIs than Hap. But I think that's not really an argument. But I think that for $1 versus $13, I don't think there's actually a gap there. I think that there's actually could potentially be a better value in a $1 Polanco than $13 or $14 Terang when it comes down to it, especially if Polanco is hitting cleanup for the Mets and he drives in 100 RBIs. I I'd rather have the $1 guy who drives in 100 RBIs than the $13 or $14 guy that just goes 2020 when I can draft a guy to go 2020 in the range that I'm drafting a Nimmo and an Ian Happ. That's all I'm really
Yeah,
trying to
I
say
don't
here.
know. We'll see if
So
that's the case.
I that's where I'm gonna draw a line there, and I think that we're splitting hairs here. I don't really think that there's a big differentiator there, but I also know, of course, speaking with my father, that like people are lined up for Polanco. Is everybody wants Jorge
Well, I
Polanco?
agree because he's a dollar and he's worth that.
Yeah,
I'm not saying his stat
and
line's bad
so
by any means.
I mean, sometimes
Everybody
a
would love to
player's
have
value
Polanco.
is like what the market says their value is, and if people are lined up for Polanco and really want Polanco, that tells me a little bit more about the actual value of the player and what people
Or
actually
is it
want.
just because no one knows they know they can't get to rank? They literally play the same position, and one's ADP 40 and one's ADP 200, and they play the same
Really? Wow.
position.
Hmm. That
I mean,
surprised me
how is
that
one
Polanco
not
went low.
clearly better than the other? I mean, I just don't know.
That's valid. Fact check that. 200 that is accurate. So I'll give you the win on that one because I think that they're the ADP gap and of what the consensus is a little bit too
I
high
love
there.
Polanco at that price. Every team would keep him. I'm not disagreeing
Mhm.
with you. Yeah, I'm taking Trang over Polanco.
So with that being said, my original would have been like a D for that one too because of what I just the perceived value of Polanco, but I think you've convinced me to get it, making it more of a win. So I'll give him a B there.
Yeah, I'll give him
Um,
like a A minus. Yeah.
yeah. McClanahan and Trout were either one of those kept? I think we
Uh,
both were, right?
Yeah, I don't remember, but I know this was another win for Bryce. Or sorry, I
Yeah.
know this was another win for Spelly in my eyes because I think Chapman again. We talked a little bit about the third base scarcity, what he was able to do, and he's another one that's had up and down seasons. But again, he's kind of proven me wrong in the past as well with the type of season. He had a really darn good season last year. Overall, an under $10 player you can easily slot in your lineup. I'm loving this, and the fact he traded away two of the most injury-prone players in the last half decade in baseball. I mean, literally talking two of the most injury-prone players. I think Spelly gets away with thievery on this one.
Yeah, I would also call this an A. I mean, we could look back at this and be like that he fucked up here because I think that for Matt Chapman, I think there's guys that have wanted Matt Chapman. I've hit a sign up about Matt Chapman when I looked at third base and was terrified. For $8 is a good value. But I will say this, Matt Chapman plays in a bad park. His hard
Yep.
hit numbers were down last year. He's on the back end of his career. I don't think he's going to steal as many bases. I don't think he's going to hit for as much power. And if Matt Chapman just ends up turning into like a 22 home run, 73 RBI guy
He's
with
been that before.
with
Yeah.
eight speed. Wait, stolen bases there. And McClanahan finally stays healthy for 130 innings, and Mike Trout finally stays
Yeah.
healthy. We're asking a lot here.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're asking for quite a bit here.
Now,
Let's
if now
not
here's
lie,
what I'll
but
say: if Trout and Chapman were the exact same price, I would have actually probably kept Trout because I would have said, you know what, like you
oh yeah,
just said, if
no
you could
arguments
tell me
there.
Trout was playing 130 games, even if Chapman was playing 160, if you told me Trout was 100% playing 130 games, I would take Trout. But
Yeah.
I think the Trout was $24 priced. I'm taking Spelly on this side.
Which if you're Tyler, who is like, I'm just tired of coming in the middle of the pack. I'd rather just be first or last. Then yeah, I actually like just
Yeah,
taking a swing on Mike Trout and Shane McClanahan because if all things go right and the stars align, they could be great players and that could
right.
prop them up the standings. Odds are it's not going to happen. I mean, it's like having both those guys be healthy for a season is like better odds at winning the lottery kind of thing. But
Sure.
it's kind of where we're at there. So actually. I don't mind it for either team. I still think that that's when you look at the overall player value of each of those players in a vacuum at this very moment. Yeah, Matt Chapman comes out ahead. I give him an A for that one. Um, we have sending out Reagans and Hunter Green for Luzardo and Drew Rasmussen. I don't know how I feel about this one. You got giving up those two aces that we know would probably go for about $40 in this year's draft. Lazardo is streaky. His overall numbers are solid, but I think he ended up finishing the year, yeah, close to a 4 ERA. The previous year was a 5 ERA.
Yeah.
And
He
it's
really
just like
did.
he looks good. He had a really good first half, and all of a sudden he gave up 11 runs, and it just taints everything. The strikeout numbers are great, though. He's going to get a lot of strikeouts if he stays healthy. And a cheaper price tag, saved a lot of money. Rasmussen could be good. I don't know if they're going to have the same leash as last year, but he was healthy all season and still only had 150
Yeah,
innings. They only let him go 4 and 5 innings.
he's
It's
very good.
really hard to get a quality start when you don't go into the sixth inning
Yeah,
after they have
that
seven
quality
runs.
start number is low for
And it's
having.
going to be hard for him to get a win on a really bad Rays team. So,
But if you're going to have that ERA and WHIP, which you might have to in order to be startable, if you're going to have that ERA and WHIP, it's probably still worth it.
But
Yeah,
look, it's way under a strikeout inning,
it
and
is.
it's not even like the ratio thing because he's not going to throw 7 innings, and so if
Right.
it's literally it's 127, so it's not like we can look at it and be like, oh well, this player they're about a strikeout inning versus a player that they finished with 180 strikeouts but in 140 innings because they were hurt. Like no, this is a guy that was in your lineup all year and only there's closers that have more strikeouts than
I was gonna
this.
say Mason Miller's
Um,
gonna have close to 100 strikeouts this year.
and
Yeah.
so like maybe not more strikeouts, but yeah, so I think Drew Rasmussen's like probably a bane in more than one category here. And so if the ERA and whip numbers regress even a little bit, you gotta pray he's traded or pray they let him go deeper into games. But he saved a lot of money, so and we see it turned it into a little bit more here. So do you like that trade looking at it, or do you just gonna want to call it
It's tough
incomplete?
because again, we talk about values in the draft and all that, and I really do think Ragans and Green go for close just as much as Hunter Brown are very close to with the scarcity of pitching in this draft. Probably Green more so because he's done it a couple years in a row. Ragans really has been up and down the last handful of years. He's had 1 year where he's pitched, I think, over 120 innings. So there is a huge gamble there. So there's a little bit of me that goes, ugh, with trading Green because I really do think Green's a top. I think you could argue top five, six pitcher in baseball. So there's a lot of me that like really, oh, that's tough. But overall, I think with where he's at and what it kind of turned into, I look at Spelly's team and I do think it needs more, a little bit more pitching. But overall, I think he did a good job with those trades and kind of securing what he needed to.
So yeah. Well, I have more to say about Cole Reagans actually here when we get
Okay.
to Bryce's team. So you kind of alluded to some things here. So then we have him parlaying Luzardo and Singer into Gilbert and Mackenzie Gore, which could be if you take Gilbert and Gore, it's going to be a price savings compared to what Reagans and Green will provide. If both those
Yeah.
guys stay healthy, you're going to come out a little bit behind, but you're getting a lot
You
more
strikeout
salary.
guys too.
And,
Yeah.
and you're talking about guys with checkered injury histories and guys who are likely to get hurt in Reagans and Green, not likely to throw 200 innings each. I would say that you might get more value, you might get more production out of Gilbert and Gore, and you might save a lot of money. And so
Yeah.
I think that this trade, I think if you combine these two, he probably gets an A in my book from what he turned it into. So
Yeah. I think he did
um,
well.
that brings us to what his team looks like now. So here's where he's at. I already listed through his team. How do you feel about where he's at going into the draft? And I got to pee.
Very good. I think he's at a really solid spot. I really do. I think he's kind of done a little bit of our approach that we've talked about of having a couple expensive guys that you need. Bobby Witt, I know we've talked about him at length already about being a $60 player. Is he worth that? Is he not? But again, Spelly needs that. He needs that superstar on his team, and I think he has that. Throw in Matt Chapman, Turang, and Torkelson. Again, there's a lot of spots to still fill, and I even like Sal Frelick. I think again, a guy you could just throw in there. You need when you're starting as many guys as we're starting catcher all the way through outfield, all the way through to a couple utility spots. You need some of those guys that you can just plug in and play, even if they're your 10th or 11th best guy. And I think he has that a little bit with Frelick and stuff like that. So yes, he's got to fill a lot of offensive spots, but I think there's at least a core there. I mean, we're talking two top 40 players, one of them being a top five player, a couple more. I think Torkelson and Chapman are both in the top 100 or close to it. So I like where he's at with his offense and his pitching. I think he's at a spot where his offense and his pitching are kind of in a similar spot where I think he can use another big hitter and I think he can use another big pitcher. And I think
He'll
his
be able
team,
to afford it.
yeah, and I think his team's going to round out pretty well. So I like where he's at with both and he can kind of grow from both of that. But again, we're talking a guy that does have to fill three outfield spots, that does need two closers. So some teams don't go in with like a super duper clear need. You can kind of do, for example, I'm catcher, first base, and two utilities. I can kind of mix and match. He's clearly going in with a need. He needs three outfielders. He need bare minimum one, probably two closers. So he's got to go in with the right draft strategy. But as of right now, with the way his team's constructed, I do think he's done a good job heading into the draft.
So here's what I said about his roster, and last time, and it remains true this time. Where like I don't like Bobby Witt at $60, but if you are going to keep Bobby Witt for $60, this is kind of what the team needs to look like. You can't keep Bobby Witt for 60 and keep Hunter Green and Cole Reagans. You have to get cheaper pitching, and he did that. He's filling it out with higher upside pitchers, yeah, and Mackenzie Gore for 6, and Clay Holmes for 5, which I don't
Yep.
love there. Drew Rasmussen for 3, and Ryan Weathers for 1. On top of Logan Gilbert, a guy who hopefully is going to eat some innings for him this year. So he's got like but 5 starters and a budget 5 stars, filling in 5 starters for less than $50 here. And so then you go to his offense, and it's like, all right, it's going to need some contributors at savings. And that's what we did with Frelick and Chapman and Turang and Torkelson, guys that will contribute positively to hopefully a couple different categories at a cheap price. So he's got some high end talent. He's got Logan Gilbert can be what we'd call an ace. It's not going to be what I would classify as like a true ace, which is my fantasy ace classification, which we don't need to get into too much, which is can this be the best pitcher on a championship caliber team or on a number one roto team? I would say Logan Gilbert is probably pushing the envelope on that, kind of being a fringe ace there, but he's an ace for Seattle, and in MLB terms, you'd call him that. And then he has a superstar player in Bobby Witt. He's got some guys with upside and Turang and Torkelson and
And he's got a lot
Frelick.
of money to
So
spend. He's got like
yeah,
160 to spend. So
and he's kind of cleared the slate here. So I think he's in a good spot. He's in a better spot than most, and I think that at least like it feels like he has like an idea. Like I
yeah,
gotta give him some props here on like it almost like it feels like there's like an intelligent planning happening here. Like some players you're like I don't, or some teams you're like I don't even know what's happening on this roster. But like
right.
with this, it's just like you can almost see the plan. You can see like there's like an inception here, and I think that some of the strings he's pulled have been solid contributions.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so let's move on to Bryce's team here, the Beantown Boys. You want to talk about trades first, or should we just look at his overall roster, what it's turned into right now?
Don't matter to me. Whatever you think's
Let's look
best.
at the overall roster so we can get a better feel for what it's kept, what was kept, and what was not kept for some
Sure.
of the trades here, because I don't really have that memorized. So he's got Durbin acquired via trade, Pena trade with Kermy early in the offseason, Butler, Cowser, Ramos, Soto, outfield full. He's got Stott and Taylor Ward there, so he's got five outfielders actually on the team total. Then he's got in the pitching department, he's got Eovaldi, Joe Musgrove, Cole Reagans, and Aroldis Chapman. So a team that looks like a little bit thin on pitching here. What are you laughing about?
Oh, we talk about this every year where I just think Bryce, it's tough because would I argue he's still probably a top 5 to 6 team in this league just based on who's on his roster. I do think so, but I do think he's he's gone down this offseason. I
It
do think
appears
that.
so.
I do, and I'm
I mean, we know this rotation will look a lot different with a certain somebody.
right. Oh yeah, 100%. And that's obviously one of the things we'll talk about in the trade. But and when you look, if you go to ADP, almost everyone in his lineup 100% is startable. Durbin is a 238 ADP. That's by far the lowest. Pena, Butler, Cowser, Ramos, Stott, Ward. But if you notice what I'm saying, and again, the next name's obviously Juan Soto, so it makes up for it. But he needs like he's only got 3 spots to fill in his lineup. He needs more bats. I mean, he just does. I mean, this is not, I don't care if it's got Juan Soto or not, in my opinion, this is not going to carry you into a top 4 or 5 offense, despite all of these guys being like solid, but they're not great. Like Butler, Pena are his next best hitters after Juan Soto. Taylor
And he's
Ward, you can
got
maybe
what 137 to spend, so he's got some money.
he's got some, but it's not as much as others. And then I look at the pitching, and I'm going to be honest, I get a little nervous because I see
Mhm.
Raggins, who's been every other year been banged up bad. I mean, he's literally only he's pitched 100 innings once in his life. So
Mhm.
again, your ace is now an injury concern. Eovaldi's 36. Granted, obviously he's a keeper. He had a fantastic year last year, but again, also only pitched in 22 games. You have
Mhm.
Musgroves, shocker, who hasn't pitched 20 games in back-to-back years, didn't even pitch last year, hasn't pitched in 20 games since 2022. And then you got Chapman, who's 37, who, yes, coming off a fantastic season, but has also had, literally looking at his player card, a bad year for a closer, good year. Bad
Mhm.
year, good year. There's a lot of gambling on this team. And yes, overall, with who he's got on his team, I'll say yes, I'd probably still put him in the top 5 heading into the draft. But I'm really worried about this team. I'm going to be honest, I am. He's got
What
to
you
draft.
think that
To
you think the
me,
fall off is here?
I do. I don't know if it's here, but to me, he has to draft good. I mentioned earlier, you could draft Mookie Betts. You missed on him. I mean, I know it was the year later. You kept him. Was he worth 50 whatever dollars? No, but you still won the championship. I don't
59 is a lot.
I don't think he can afford to spend that much money on a player and not have them hit because he's got kind of, in my eyes, a lot of gambles already.
Mhm. He historically he does a pretty good job of drafting depth, so we'll see what that looks like. But it's a team that certainly cannot afford an injury to Juan Soto or an injury to Cole Reagans, and so I think if one of those things happen, I think that the rest of the team is not going to be able to uplift
No.
this right this ship here. So we might see a down year from Bryce. I believe in him. I can't disparage him after being our two-time defending Roto champ here, and I'm more of a Roto guy. I target Roto scoring because I feel like it creates the most well-rounded team, and I think that's the best indictment of who was the best team all year, more than head-to-head does. So that's really my focus on how good a team is how good they perform in Roto, because it's not just to do where you flash in the pan for the last month and a half of the season.
Let me ask you this: we just looked at Spelly's team, right?
Yeah.
And we just talked about how it's shaping up to be good. Would you
Mhm.
go in and say, I mean, Spelly's got $30 more going into the draft.
Hmm.
Okay. He does have to fill two more spots, but is there part of you that would maybe take Spelly's team over Bryce's, or do you like the overall depth of Bryce's team more? And I know we're not power ranking teams, but since it's the last team we just talked about, I'm just curious, who would you rather be going into the draft?
I think I'd still rather be Bryce.
Would you? Okay, and that's fair to say, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just think he's got to draft very, very right. I
Well,
mean,
the
he
standard is different for Bryce than it is
yeah,
for Matt. So it's just like, hey, Matt, you did such a good job. We're so proud of you. And like for Bryce, it's like, get your shit together, Bryce. We
yeah.
expect more out of you, kind of thing. But like, I mean, good on Bryce because he was a little bit of a laughing stock. Not
Would
really.
look great with
I
Scooble.
say that lightheartedly, but for the first, season or two, it was bad news for
Yeah,
Bryce. So he was the bad news Bryce, not the bad news Bears,
right.
for a while. So here's what I'll say about Cole Reagans. I don't want to be super disingenuous because I love the player, and you guys know that already. I think early in the offseason, I really wanted Cole Reagans. I was trying to work some deals, try and get him from Matt, and then I kind of wanted him for Bryce. I would not. I'm staying away from Cole Reagans this year. And the reason for that is despite believing in the player, and I think that there's like, if you look at his strikeout rate, he had basically like the highest strikeout rate in the league last year, and it was not even close. I mean, 98 strikeouts in 61 innings was like, if you don't include the closers for starting pitchers, he just didn't qualify enough. He didn't have enough innings. But had he, it would have been like not like more than anyone else he could even come close to.
Yeah.
But he's got three different ways that things could go bad for him this upcoming year. First off, it could go bad for him from a health standpoint because as you've pointed out several times that he's only really held a starter's workload one time, and it was last year or 2024 where he threw 186 innings and he was stellar and he was great. And
Yeah.
luckily for me, I reaped the benefits of that season, and it really carried me that year with 223 strikeouts, 186 innings, good ERA, good WHIP, all that kind of stuff. So. He has had Tommy John once or twice. I think it was even two different arm surgeries there for Cole Reagans. He started off as a reliever, so he wasn't really built up through all the years of being a starting pitcher where he's handled a workout load consistently. So he's got that going against him where he's an injury risk. Second of all, they're moving the fences in at Kauffman right
Yep.
Stadium. So like he could just face some negative regression in the ERA department from giving up more home runs because of the moving the fences in and balls that were doubles or flyouts before, now home runs, and all of a sudden his ERA goes up. That's another concern. And then the last concern is like, is he actually good? Like we
Yeah.
have the one solid year where it all came together, but he had a 4.67 shout out ERA last year and a 1.18 whip. Like those are not solid numbers from what you would expect out of a $31, what we'd call an ace. And so like I was like, there's a lot of ways for this to go wrong, which is he pitches as poorly as he did last year. He could get hurt, and the fences could have negative ramifications. There's more ways for it to go wrong than it could go right. So I'm kind of out on Cole Reagans for that for my $31 there. So
Sure.
I think with that, there's a lot of risk here. A lot of risk with obviously Joe Musgrove and Nate Eovaldi is about as stable as they come for an ERA standpoint, but not always consistent with giving you 150 plus innings
Yeah.
there.
I mean, just
So
look how
yeah,
old this team man is. 36-year-old
yeah.
pitcher, 33-year-old pitcher, 37-year-old pitcher. I mean, there's a lot of risk here, I think. And there's not a whole lot of certainty, and I think the certainty comes from drafting superstars. And if we look at his trades, I know we've disagreed on like is Vlad really worth it or not, but the first trade he made this offseason, and again, we're looking at it way back then, so he's made a lot of trades since then, but to me like yeah, you got Pena at a value and you got Durbin, you're keeping them both, granted, but that's kind of going like, to my point of like that's great that you have them at depth and value, but like you need a superstar. Like you need someone else in this lineup to like carry that load. And to me, Vlad Guerrero would kind of be that guy.
Mm.
Um, Obviously he got in the Scooble trade we'll look at in a little bit. He got Riley Green, which is a solid, middle of the order bat. I know we differentiate on that a little bit, but I don't know. He just has to draft well because I'm it makes it sound like I don't like his team
Usually he does.
because I do like his team. I still think he's one of the top five rosters constructed right now. I just think I'm throwing a huge caution flag and saying there's a lot of things that can go wrong here.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. So let's take a look and see if this was his own doing or what kind of happened here with some of these trades and how they kind of look now. So we started with he acquired Jeremy Pena and Caleb Durbin for Vlad. I think this is a massive win. I think this is an A plus. I've talked ad nauseum in the last podcast how I don't really value a guy like Vlad who's a $39 player for 39 or whatever he is. So it's not a lot of surplus value there. With Jeremy Pena would be a $20 player in this auction who he has for 6. Caleb Durbin is a guy who got traded into a starting your role with his favorite team before it even happened. So I think it comes out for $2, a big time ahead in this trade. Where I think this is an A plus of a kind of a trade of what
Well,
I would envision doing in an offseason. You disagree though, right?
I completely disagree. Yeah. And again, it matters what team you are too, right? Because I had to trade a salary because I didn't have much salary. So, like, would I have maybe done a trade similar to this with my team? Yes, I'll trade a $39 Vlad, free up salary. Let me get value. Let me get Durbin. Let me get Pena. And I think that's kind of where he was at the beginning of the year because he did have Witt. He did have Vlad. So he did have Scooble. So I get that he did have a lot of these big salary guys. But to me, when you're just breaking it down to brass tacks right now, Pena's been very inconsistent in his career. There's been years he's literally been fantasy like non-startable. I mean, I literally think in 2024 he was barely startable.
Damn,
In
he's
20,
young. He debuted very young. He's what,
yeah, but I mean
26
he's
now or
had pretty
something?
much 4 full seasons now. Like what's that next step that he can really
He's
take?
28 now, so he's just entering his prime. And so
He's
feel like
never he's
who
hit
he was
21
last year,
plus.
he's in his fourth season. Feel like who he was last year is a bigger, last 2 years actually, is a bigger
Miro
investment
is
in who
about
he
a
is.
category contributor, and he's never been plus in runs. He's never been really plus in home runs outside of his rookie. He's never been plus in RBIs. He gets you 20 steals. He's one of those guys that I agree. If he's the ninth or 10th best hitter on your team, that's fine. But you're giving up Vlad Guerrero. We're talking a literal top 20 player in fantasy baseball.
He was literally Bryce Terang without the runs scored last year, almost exactly.
No,
With
no.
363 OBP, 17 homers, 20
20 less
steals.
RBIs, right?
I don't know.
30, we're talking 30 less runs. That's significant. 30 less runs. So I don't know, man. And again, it's different context. Bryce needs a superstar. Vlad Guerrero is a top 20 fantasy player. And again, there's more context with the rest of the trades. I get that, but I think he traded away essentially what he needs right now.
Mhm. And here's and again my kind of philosophy here is like so Vlad was what? Vlad was 34, so he's $39. So he traded
Yeah.
away $39 and he acquired eight. So that's a surplus. So he gets two players and he gets a surplus of 31. Can he get Freddie Freeman for $31? In this draft. And I would say, yeah, he probably can. And so, like, if you're looking at this trade as is Jeremy Pena, Caleb Durbin, and Vladimir Guerrero, and Freddie Freeman for Vlad, that's an absolute home run. And that's kind of why I look at like the value side of it, where it's just like you can replace Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s production, maybe not in one player, but like the actual salary savings you're making there is where you really try and squeeze that value out. And I think that makes the biggest difference in the world. That's why I think he comes out way ahead because he can find a $31 first baseman for that money and
Yeah, we'll
still
see.
get the benefit of Durbin and Pena,
Yeah, we'll see.
those
Let's
values.
not forget Pete Alonso is kept at 42. And so who knows?
Which I don't love either, but
Yeah.
that's there. If enough of those guys are kept, it starts to be turn into like where Kyle's just wrong all the time. Where like Kyle always says that you shouldn't keep these guys here, but if those guys are always kept and they're just not available in the draft, then you can't always be right about it when you
Yeah.
literally cannot get guys like that in the auction because they're kept. So next we have Josh Lowe. Bryson Stott is who he acquired. He gave up Waka. Waka was not kept. He did keep Stott, and I think he threw back Josh
Yeah.
Lowe.
So literally he
So
gained a player from this. And I would probably, and again, me and you might disagree, I would probably I think it's right on the fringe. I think what is he, $12? His ADP is 160. So he is starting in most lineups. He plays a kind of scarce second base in fantasy. He's 24 steals, probably league average OBP. He again, he's probably again that perfect fit of he could be the eighth or ninth best guy on your team. So the fact that he got this essentially for nothing, I will give him an A plus on this one.
I'm gonna give him a D because I think it's a trap because I feel like I would not keep Bryson Stott for 11. He's not an $11 player. I mean, if you're talking about a guy I mean, this I guess is this is Jeremy Pena numbers, right? It's almost exactly with about a couple less home runs. So
But
talking
if
out
you
both sides of
let
my
me
mouth,
just let me
but
just ask you this, okay? His ADP is 160. People around that in the draft, okay, are Murakami, Isaac Paredes, Brian Reynolds, Christian Walker, Addison Barger. So you're not keeping that at 11. Are you getting those guys around 11 in the draft?
a lot of those guys, you might be right that I would probably say no. I think some of them yes, some of them no. I think with Paredes, question marks about playing time, and same thing with
Yeah.
Christian Walker,
Yeah.
performance in him. Is he hurt,
Marcus
Walker?
Simeon's there, Jason
Um,
Dominguez,
I think it's
Doyle.
about Dominguez is not doesn't even have a spot to play,
Right,
so
he might be
maybe
sent
there.
down. Yeah.
But I just like I don't think there's any upside here with Stott. Like I don't think that he is going to be a full-time player. They don't trust him to play every day. It's why he only had 499 at bats, which is why we know his runs and RBIs RBIs are not going to be high. With 13 home runs is not what you want out of a guy you're keeping for 11. The stolen bases might help a little bit, sure, 24 last year, but OBP 328 is not really helping you. So he's really only helping you in
Not
steals, and he's
hurting you
hurting
though.
you in four of the categories. It's not the kind I want, I think it's one of those mental blocks where it's the double digit keeper thing, where 11 is significantly different than six because one is single digits, one's double digits. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie, but it just the feel of it just feels worse. I would not keep him at 11. So to me, I feel like it's a trap because like he ended up getting trapped into keeping side at 11. I wouldn't have. So that's
Mm.
why I give it a D, and you can give it a
Yeah,
higher
we
grade than that
disagree there.
because
Yeah.
it was a net +1 if you feel like that was good there.
Yep.
I'll give a B to the Julio for Bobby Witt thing because
Yep.
he acquired Julio and he's going to get more value out
Probably
of him
fun.
later, more so than Witt, who I don't think he was going to keep at 60 anyway.
Yep.
So maybe even an A. Here's the big one: the Scooble for Lawrence Butler, King, and Riley Green. Triple F minus. I'm not going to be too hard on him though because oh no, actually I'm going to be really hard on him because this is not the Schwellenbach trade, and I always think it was, and it's not.
Uh,
He gave up Scooble. He didn't even shop him around. He shut everybody else down on Scooble, and then all of a sudden it popped up that he traded him for Lawrence Butler, who I don't think is a good value. Wouldn't have kept him. Michael King is a good player, but not a great value at 17. And Riley Green, good player, not a good value at 30, is not the kind of return that I would envision for the best pitcher in the league on a very bargain contract. Embarrassing trade here.
yeah, I completely agree. This was awful. When we're talking the best fantasy player in baseball, we're talking, I mean, really, if Scooble was in this draft, and I would argue in almost any draft at this point, we're looking at probably our first $50 pitcher.
Yeah.
At this point, I think
Yep.
easily, without question. So I just think this is bad. So the fact that like we're talking a $35 player is a huge value at that dollar price point because he's just that damn good.
Mhm.
And I personally would keep Riley Green, so you probably like it. I mean, you
I would
probably
probably keep him, but I just don't like the
yeah.
value because I just think he's a $30 player for 30,
Well,
and I think
well,
it's a
I
nonsense.
guess my point is Riley Green's ADP 65. There's three outfielders that are extremely close to that in the draft, which is Bellinger, Suzuki,
Who
um,
I just said were high 20s, right?
right, high 20s. So I think
Yeah.
again that's the whole point of like, is he right around price point, which I think he
Yeah.
is, but is that worth a two-time back-to-back Cy Young pitch? By far and
No.
none, him and Skeens are the best fantasy
No,
players in
you better
baseball.
pay out the ass for that guy.
Yes. And you have to get players that are I feel like if you trade Scooble, you have to get like an extremely obvious cheap keeper. Like
Yeah.
what you have to get a guy that's like under 10 or $15 that is like a stud. Like you just have to.
Or like a top 50 player.
Yes, the
At
fact that
least
he
one.
is pretty much paying for all of these guys too. This was bad. He knows it. He's talked about it. We don't got to harp on him too much, but again, the fact that this team still rounded out fine is good. But yeah, this one hurt. So I'm gonna give him
So
an
and then he turned Riley Green into Schwallenbach and Kauser. Now, at the time, I didn't hate this trade because I was a Schwallenbach fan, but obviously now it hurts. At least he got hurt before the season. He was able to get that
yeah.
salary back.
Not
Kauser ended up
talk
keeping,
about
so
here.
I actually don't mind this trade because I think that Kauser might even offer better value in Green because I think that Kauser might be worth $10, who I think he kept for like 6 versus
Yeah.
Green, who if he's just a $30 for 30, I'll like it still. And I would have liked the upside of Schwallenbach. And I think having Schwallenbach makes his team look a little bit better than what it does now. It's almost one of the pieces that it's missing. So that's why, I can't be
Yeah,
too hard on him for that. So
I
overall, I
agree.
kind of like that one.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the scarcity of pitching. Even if you looked at it as a straight up green for Schwallenbach, you probably take the pitching a little bit in that sense, even though it's probably pretty close. But no, I agree with you. But obviously the injury happened, so it looks worse.
I do not know what to make of this one. I'll let you take the lead. Pavetta and Ian Happ he gave up for Cole Reagans and Joe Musgrove.
Yeah, it just wasn't a smart move. Musgrove haven't played in 2 years. We just talked about Ragan's injuries. He literally just took two injury prone pitchers and
Bring it
extreme.
up upside.
Yeah, extreme. Yeah, but extreme injury prone pitchers. And again, I'm keeping Musgrove for a dollar too because
Yeah.
whenever he is on the mound, he is very good, very good. But it's just a matter of he's extremely injury prone, and I don't think that's worth giving up Hap. It is certainly not worth giving up Pavetta. Now, again, Pavetta's had one good year
Happ is
in
fine.
his Pavetta's given up one good year in his entire life. I mean, literally, that was last year.
Mhm.
Just does he keep that up? We'll see. But you just can't give up what he gave you last year in 2025, which you could argue literally was one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yep.
Honestly, Nick Pivetta was.
Yeah.
And Ian Happ, to me, when we talk about outfielders and how many outfielders need to get drafted, I think me and you might disagree a little bit on this with him being $22. But he is probably literally, again, when you think of Bellinger and Suzuki being in the draft and this and that, that's probably a perfect price for him. He gives you a little bit more on OBP, he gives you home runs, RBIs, a little bit runs. He's one of those guys that kind of doesn't do great in anything, but he gives you everything, and I feel like every team needs that. So I think this is a huge, huge loss on Bryce's end, and that's right. That's why I was saying when I was looking at his team, I still think he's one of the top 5 or 6 teams, but we're looking at all these trades and we're like loss, loss, loss.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Um, I feel like I can stand up for Ian Happ and at least have some kind of integrity here. When I say Ian Happ is not good, not that he's not good, that I wouldn't keep him for 22 because I literally proved that by throwing back Brandon Nimmo for 20, who was drafted ahead and was $2 cheaper. Brandon Nimmo has taken, I think, 9 picks ahead of Ian Happ, and not keeping Nimmo for 20, but
See, and
I
I
said
would have.
that I can't do that. I wouldn't keep Happ at 22. It just doesn't really make sense. I could
And
get
see
him
that
back
and
for
that's the
22.
difference is it maybe not on my team because of the pricing and everything, but I would have kept
Yeah.
Nemo at 20. Yeah.
Well, would
So
you see? Yeah, okay, Neil and Hap at 22. I think some people would have. There's a couple people that said they would have, but just not a guy you want to give up an asset for. I obviously shop
sure.
them around, but as general consensus, yeah, he's a fine player, just like Ian Happ is, but not a guy I really want to give up much for. So I actually like this trade because I feel like Pavetta, although he's a solid player, and I think that there could be immense value if he repeats what he did last year. Hap is not a guy I would have kept. I think if you're taking Musgrove and Reagan's, could Musgrove this year do what Pavetta did last year? Probably not from an inning standpoint, from a production standpoint, I think he could. And then Reagan's having the upside he does. I think it's a swing at upside. But for a guy that is a year-to-year contender, he's not in the position where he should take that kind of swing on upside. This is a trade that I would want like Tyler to make or somebody like we mentioned earlier, just not
Yeah.
from Bryce. Next, giving up Story and no, he gave up Julio for Ramos and Story. I like this one. I'm gonna give it an A. I don't like Ramos, but I like Story for $1. I would much rather have Story for $1 than Julio for 47. So I give it an A.
I mean, again, he's getting values there. I would have Ramos on my team as a keeper. I would have Story on my team as a keeper. I think most people in the league would. And that's again where we say, is Julio Rodriguez really worth 47? He probably goes for that in the draft. So there's that. Again, we're kind of talking about that again. But for a guy that needs a superstar, and again, I just talked about how many teams have money. Jordan has money. Justin has money. A lot of people have money. Bryce I still think needs a superstar on both ends, and again we can continuously keep seeing him trading away these superstars, and that's where I think he's kind of hurting himself. So I get it from a pure value standpoint. The contracts of Ramos and Story make sense, but from a roster construction standpoint, I'm just not liking it. I think he's traded away too many superstars, and that's why I think like I'm gonna give this one a C, kind of a C grade, because I think it's kind of a wait and see grade because Julio Rodriguez is by far and away, it's not even close, way better than these players. But
Yeah,
yes,
you
you're
argue
getting
with me
values from
there.
Ramos and Story in their contracts. But he needs these players though. He needs a superstar. So we'll see.
hmm Next, you got Eovaldi for Story. So he acquired Story and then traded him for Eovaldi, which you did say kind of needs pitching scarce.
Yeah.
So you must like this one then.
I like it, but again, Eovaldi's been very consistent in his career, but he's also never been like a huge innings hog. He's kind of back and forth on that, so I worry somewhat about that. I also worry. I think he's 36 years old now, so at some point, does it ever fall off? Overall,
Mhm.
I think it's fine because Story has also been a huge injury concern. I mean, he's literally finally hit 100 games for the first time, I think, since COVID last year. So, huge injury concern there. But if Story really does do what he did last year at $1, we're talking probably one of the best values in the league. I mean, the dude had
I agree.
90 runs, he had 25 bombs, 96 RBIs, and he had 31 steals. We're talking a
Yeah,
25-30 guy with almost 100 runs scored. That's sneaky.
fantastic.
That's sneaky one of the best contracts in the league. But again, with the scarcity of pitching, I could see this between Phil and Bryce as being you like this guy, I like that guy, I need pitching, you need okay, fine. So overall I'm gonna give this a B, but I'm surprised you traded his guy. I was shocked when I
Yeah,
saw you
me
traded
too.
his guy.
Yeah. Next we have yeah, I'm gonna give it a yeah, I'm gonna give it a C minus, I guess, because I think that Evaldi as a pitcher could be a good thing, but yeah, I think Story's a better value right now. And then last, King for Ward, he's gonna get a B plus on this one, just because I
Yep.
feel like there's no real arguments on why Jordan would trade a $17 King, acquire him for a $10 Ward. So Bryce is saving $7 here, and he's getting a guy that's drafted ahead of King. And so for that very reason, in a one-for-one trade, it's like pretty clear cut dry. Like you got the better player and you're spending less money for him. That doesn't make any sense. So I mean, props to Bryce for pulling this off. It's actually he was a part of the 14 trade I mentioned in the chat, but so he gets some credit for it, I guess. But
Yeah.
head scratcher for Jordan.
No, I like this one too because I even tried going after Ward. Again, when we talk about not the scarcity in outfield, but the fact that a lot of outfield positions got to be filled, who would not want to have Taylor Ward on their team? I mean, really, when you look at what he's done the last couple of years, his OBP is a little bit low, but in terms of being a power bat, in terms of scoring a decent amount of runs, hitting, RBIs last year, 103, 36 bombs, hitting probably a way better offense this year too. I mean, he's been hitting with the Angels the last couple of years. He gets to now go to what, Baltimore? And
Yeah.
that offense with Pete Alonso, Gunnar, Jackson Holloway when everyone gets going. So I really think this is a huge one for him. Again, there is a scarcity of pitching. Michael King's fine, but I almost throw him into the Raggins camp of, hey guys, he's done it one time where he's pretty much pitched over 100 innings. He's had 1 year where he's been a full-time starter because before that he was a bullpen pitcher with New York. I like King. I think he's got great stuff, but I'm trusting Taylor Ward more as that consistent guy. So I'm liking this from Bryce's perspective.
Hmm. Yeah, so hard to argue there. And I would kind of agree with there. And then I mean Ward has up. I mean, hit 36 home runs, 100 RBIs last year. So it's hard to argue with what the upside is there. I don't think he does that again. I think it was more of a fluke. So I don't think that Ward himself is actually going to have that kind of a season with Baltimore with a tougher ballpark to hit in. But I still think that he's probably going to be worth that contract, I would say. So
Yep.
kind of a win there. So overall, do you have any more thoughts on Bryce's team here that we haven't
No,
said
not at
already?
all. I am gonna run to the restroom quick and fill up my water.
Good because we're gonna stop here. I'm gonna close out the Zoom and we're gonna save where we're at here since I'm frozen up there. Let's let this and
Okay.
we'll just do it as two parts.
Okay, that works. Awesome. I'll
All
be
right.
right back. I'll be back
Yeah.
literally in like 2 minutes.
Uh,